Artists rarely are lacking passion. Many times they're not lacking talent. It's often workflow, discipline, habit building. That's just the shit that tends to get in the way for most artists.
Most people really lack a sense of what they could do for their artistic career. Oh, I should be marketing myself. Oh, building an owned audience might be good. Actually having some sort of secondary income or side hustle that I can do in between times is not a bad idea. So it's not when somebody's mind is opened to all the different ways that they can really make something happen. This is where we spend now 95% of our struggles is how do we manage it all? How do we balance it all?
First off, everyone needs to listen to your podcast. I think you guys are probably my most favorite industry podcast out there because you guys really teach actors how to actually be entrepreneurs, how to actually market themselves. So I also do feel like every actor should think of themselves as a business person.
Hey all, Mike here. Before we get started with today's episode, I just want to ask you to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell below us if you're watching on YouTube, or be sure you follow us on your favorite podcast listening app, if that's your preferred way of engaging with the podcast. And if you're feeling extra generous, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We read them all, even the bad ones, so leave a review there. Lastly, if you enjoy Creative Risk and you want to dive deeper, consider joining our Patreon community. We offer 3 membership tiers starting at just $5. As a member, you're going to get early access to ad-free episodes, weekly motivational content, bonus full-length episodes, and much more, including a book club. Come on. But it's more than just content. You'll be a part of a community dedicated to accountability and support, helping you stay motivated and inspired. So head over to patreon.com/creative risk podcast. Check out the description below for that link and sign up today. Okay, we're here.
We are here.
I always have trouble opening
Your cans?
Yeah, I don't know why. It's just like it requires a lot of finger action.
Do you have nails?
Nope. I do not. Okay, so wait, let's pick up the conversation. So, political conversation.
Right.
So Joe Biden dropped out of the race yesterday.
I was driving. We put on Chicken Noodle News as we were driving.
I mean, and it's like what I said to you. The thing that I've thought, I was with like a bunch of like very like, they're my age, but like they went to Small Ivy. It was like a bunch of like liberals.
Grand old Ivy.
Yes, bunch of small like so very institutionally, and I was like literally this woman was like, who I really love this woman. She's so talented and very smart, but she was like, this is like the bravest. So brave of him to do this. And I was like, what? I was shocked because, and it's amazing how the media like spun this whole thing like this. So the New York Times thing, it's like, it's the most patriotic thing. It's like he had to be dragged out. They dragged him out. Like that is.
I mean, that is definitely one side of it.
But that is the side of it.
Well, it's not the only side. It's not. He didn't have to go anywhere. He didn't have to.
Well, he didn't have any. He had no money.
That's fine, but
the whole Democratic establishment was turning on him, and they're the ones, by the way, who got him elected. It's not like he doesn't have any grassroots support. So it's like, what were his options?
It's not that I think he's some big hero, but I do have to say, put yourself in his position. You are a career politician.
Okay, my brain is mud.
For 50 plus years. You're at the end of your life. You have to come to terms with the fact that you're probably maybe experiencing some form of dementia, potentially. Your body's shutting down. This is happening on an international scale. The world is watching you. It's embarrassing. It's sad. Like, all business aside for a second, like, you really have to like come to grips. And if you've ever actually seen people who are going through early levels of dementia, they're in denial.
But what's wild about this conversation is I don't care. I don't care. Okay. This is the president. This isn't like the guy who owns the local ice cream parlor. This is the president of the United States. And so like this whole idea of like put yourself in his shoes and like, I don't understand that. I really don't. It's like it should never have happened. We should have never, ever, ever, ever. But they've been covering up.
Just to be clear, what should never have happened is allowing him to even consider a second term.
Never should have happened.
Now that's fair, but I would argue that that's not just Biden.
No, it's not. No, it's the whole Democratic fucking party establishment.
Right. So I guess I feel for him from the standpoint of well, first of all, I just feel for elderly people.
Sure.
I just I feel bad for him, and I would argue that he has sort of been put into this position by your point by the establishment. So if the establishment chooses to spin it as a hero story, what else are you going to do? You want to now? I've received 38 text messages from fundraising all over. From just put yourself in their position for a second. They have to spin the story as best they possibly can. He's our hero. He's a legacy man. He's one of the best presidents ever. Now let's hand it over to Kamala. Like that's what they're going to do.
Well, no, I mean, I don't. Oh, do I expect anything less from these people? No, but like, I guess what's wild to me is like
people buying it.
People, well, because people buying it. Number one, there being any type of optimism at this moment because.
Are you just kind of a little annoyed that the Democratic? I don't know. I'm not trying to be shady.
I'm not.
Are you a little like fuck now? Like they're getting because the wind is back in their sails.
Oh, I don't. Well, first off, is it? I think it's grossly overstated.
$30 million yesterday.
Yeah, but how much of that is grassroots support?
Who knows?
How much of that is grassroots support?
They said it was all their online platforms.
I mean, the thing I will say is that I don't. Well, just to be clear, I do not want the Republicans to win. I do not want Donald Trump and JD Vance to be in charge of this country. What I am always about is the game of politics and these corporate interests and the way these parties operate is corrupt and it's disgusting. That is what I'm all about. They covered up the fact that he was senile for at least a year. They covered it up. His scripted questions. He didn't do any fucking interviews. People knew that he was senile for a year, and they covered it up. That is a fact. And then when it all turned on them, then all of a sudden they and so what bothers me is the bold face and the fact that they're painting him to be this hero. Why I don't like it is because it's a lie. It's a lie because. I don't like all of this. I know that we're so numb to the fact that like politics is a game and these people are inhuman and it's like that they don't really work for us. I think that's when I take that viewpoint, of course I go in your camp. I'm like, well, yeah, of course they're doing what they got to do. But I am so sick and tired of how corrupt, how much lying, how much fucking lack of transparency and honesty the political class has. It really bothers me.
I hear it. I guess for me, that's capitalism for you. They're just selling and spinning. And if we know this to be the case, and if I may, if we know we don't want Trump and JD Vance to be in office, I would say, I'm not saying for us not to have this conversation. I would say let's break this down after the fact, because right now. Now, here's where I think you and I are maybe a little different, though. You are, I would argue, more the potential of RFK. And what's happening is the Democratic establishment is rising again in this moment, pulling out all the old tricks, per your point, covering up this, hiding that, and I told you earlier that there's some Republicans who are saying they think this was staged because, and we know Trump's freaking out, because all of a sudden, what has been an awful 3 weeks for the Democrats is now becoming a pretty great...
The assassination thing is now completely under the... it's like the story is completely shifted.
Exactly.
The narrative is... No, I mean, look, that is the game. That is the fucking game. And I guess what really disconcerts me and really upsets me about seeing that is how people watching these really smart people be like, yeah, how brave. Like what I was with yesterday, I was like, just how to me it feels to me it feels anti-democratic. It feels like a totalitarian system where smart people are not allowed to think. Right. And by the way, what I don't like too about the Democratic Party right now is this is a participatory democracy. I don't work for you, motherfucker. Right. You work for me. Right. Stop trying to guilt me into voting for you. Right. What the fuck is that? That to me is that whole fucking the whole tactic of well, we just need to shut up. That's why I fucking hate Hillary Clinton. I really do, is because she's the worst of them. She doesn't work for the people. She thinks the people should work for her. You know, she's going up there and be like, well, fuck you. That's the choices. Fuck you. That's what it is. It's like, hey, you know what? I'm not beholden to you, bitch.
Right.
You
Right.
work for me. And it's wild to me, the political class, and look, what's even more crazy is like, we're not taking cues. I was saying this yesterday to these people. We're not taking cues from the Republicans. Let's be clear. The Republicans, smart, because you're talking about establishment. Peter Thiel fucking funding JD Vance, fucking Elon Musk, like, you know, they're in corporate interest pocket, but they can run an anti-establishment campaign because they were so openly against the political system. And we're not taking any of these cues. We're not taking any of the cues of running an anti-establishment candidate, where I think the energy is. I think the energy is people don't trust their government. They don't trust the media. They know corporations rule this country. It's like,
but let me throw this your way. If we weren't 3 weeks away, 3.5 weeks away from the Democratic National Convention, maybe then, to your point, let's let Senator Manchin really throw his hat in the ring. Let's let Marianne Williamson and even potentially Bernie and maybe even Elizabeth Warren all go, you know what? I want to have a shot at this. But again, from a strategic game plan standpoint, where it's like we've got a matter of weeks to teach the country of a name, because it's all marketing. And to your point, that's what Trump did so well. Because does Kamala thrill me? No. But am I going like, okay, we know who she is. She's got some name value. They can carry on from the good work that Biden has.
I understand that. I think that's an old way of looking at it. I think surprisingly, if they were to keep it open right now, it would be better for their interests, because no matter who would win, I feel like young people would go and people would go, well, at least they tried. What this whole idea about like, well, we need to, this whole idea of forcing people to like get behind and like we need to come together and the party just naturally came around Donald Trump. The Republican Party just and why it was so genius was because it felt like the people's choice. And the fact that the Democratic Party is still like what they did to fucking Bernie, and the fact that they're still fucking controlling, I think that is an old school way of looking at it.
I don't disagree with that necessarily. I actually don't necessarily. I'm just, again, you know me. I could see, and not like I'm Mr. like reasonable, everybody's in the middle, but that is, you're right about that. But then also the other's risky.
Of course.
And so you are someone who probably is a bit more burn it down. And I mean the establishment as is, let it all fucking crumble and you know, let it be survival of the fittest, so to speak, so that the people can have a voice again. Because I don't totally disagree with you. But, and I think I naturally have a personality that is a little bit more establishment. You know, that's sort of my natural inclination. So while it makes sense what you're saying, I also understand why the powers that be are protecting. You know, it's a risk. The other is a risk. Because to your point, if it was old school, because in my mind, personally, I was like, imagine if Bernie stepped up again, the people's president. Meaning, talk about a grassroots, you know, a person, you know, civilian motivated campaign. If Bernie all of a sudden was in the race, that's kind of thrilling, but it's a risk, and they're being safe. And if I may, part of what I hear your criticism, I think it's totally fair, is we'll stop playing it safe. What if you didn't play it safe? What if you actually cracked it open and let shit run wild?
That's why it bothers me, is because Donald Trump came on the scene almost 10 years ago, and the Democrats have learned nothing. They have learned, and what's wild to me is that the Democrats have become surprisingly on the biggest beef independents have with Democrats. I would say one of the biggest beefs is that they're establishment candidates, is that they're from the political class, they're elitist. All of a sudden, liberals are the biggest supporters of intelligence organizations. the CIA, like the New York Times slobbers at the cock of the FBI and the CIA. It's like these are people who were not elected, who fucking, there is a shadow government. There is a shadow government. I don't know how deep it is. I don't know what fucking, but like we overthrow countries. We fucking, dispose fucking people we don't like. We're all like, the CIA is fucking real. And like it's an unconstitutional, but now like liberals are like, oh, we love the CIA. We love before Trump was elected, like there was a whole Bowling for Columbine thing that we were still writing on, where it's like liberals were distrusting the media. They were questioning the media. They were skeptical of the media. And now it's like, again, we slobber at the dicks of like these liberal papers who are owned by billionaires who have fucking their agenda. And it's like, but now liberals are like, that's what disgusts me about this current moment is like, it feels like, the Democratic Party and at least old school liberals are like purely establishment candidates.
Yeah.
And it's like these, and it's wild to me. And it's like,
I listen, I really value, I hear what you're saying, and it's not that I disagree.
It's unrealistic. I understand.
And I just want to say, I do think if Trump wasn't, I could see it going both ways. Either what you're saying is like, no, take the risk to beat the devil, or stay in the lane that we know, maintain power, control the manipulation in order to try to get past this hump. And two very different schools of thought. And if it was Mitt Romney for president right now, honestly, I'd be like Mitt over Kamala.
We'll see. I mean, listen, we'll see. The thing is that the last thing I'll say is like, does the Democratic Party truly believe that this is a threat to democracy? Trump, do they truly believe that? We'll see. Here's how we'll see. We'll see based on polls over the next 2 weeks what people think about Kamala, and we'll see. And if they keep riding their party line and they don't change, and they're like, whatever, the fact that it took them this, we'll see if they really think Trump is a threat to democracy.
I can't wait to watch, though. I will tell you, I can't wait to watch that debate because, I mean, unfortunately, Biden was a literal potato in the last one. But the truth is that, and what the angle of the Kamala campaign is prosecutor versus felon. And
that's good.
It is good. And Kamala is an intelligent woman and very capable. And I say this because they're such different schools. Kamala is going to debate him like she would a prosecutor.
Well, they're both a little ridiculous. I'm not as Kamala's a little bit of a gypsy curses kind of. She's always like, "Well, my mom always said if you fuck a coconut, then you expect the bees to come." She's always
Michael's
saying,
obsessed with that. When I fell out of a coconut tree, we exist in the context.
I mean, she's always saying like random ass shit like that.
No, I totally agree. I'm just excited. What was sad about it, really, like as a nation, we were participating in elder abuse by letting this man up. I mean, Trump was anyway.
And just to give the Republicans their due for fuck them, it's like this whole idea of like this whining of like, how fucking disconnected you have to be. Like, we've been running this campaign against Joe Biden, and now it's unfair. It's like, what the fuck are you even talking about? Because they're terrified.
Well, that should, and because of the momentum, which is why I had to tell you, when I saw the Republicans going, we think this was staged, I was like, you know what? The same way that the Democrats are saying that the assassination attempt was staged, politics is all one fucking.
Which, by the way, do you really? I have not. I heard that like once, but now I'm hearing overwhelmingly that like more people are saying that what's suspicious about the assassination attempt is that it does seem like it was an inside job. Because it was the Secret Service agent. Do you see the Secret Service director being like, well, the roof was sloped, so we didn't want to put anybody up there? It's like, no.
There are a lot of odd. Well, listen, this is when you go to JFK, which we got a big episode today, so let's not go into JFK theories. But to your point, it was odd. I agree that it was odd, but
which way was it odd? I guess is up to debate, but I don't think we're having the full. I certainly.
Did you see that TikTok I sent you of that woman though? Like the photo shoot of like it was like Trump of like a woman who's like she's like the best photo shoot I've ever seen in my life. It was like him like her like falling boom, boom, But like,
I know. Well, listen, it was. And like the fact that like what did I talk to
if
you
you
about
really
this?
got an assassination attempt, you think you'd be up there being like, fight. No, you'd be
Oh.
crying like a fucking baby.
Oh my god. Well, listen, no, I would. But the fact that people were like, oh, well, when he got shot, we didn't like the way he dealt with that. Like when he said fight, like it's like, bitch, what the fuck are you? He was just shot in the face, like, and you don't like the way he like when the adrenaline is like bursting through your body, and someone tried to fucking kill you. You don't like the way he reacted, like. I mean, that's the thing. Everybody's a fucking idiot. That's what I can't. Everybody's a fucking moron. Everybody's a moron.
And we are here today,
including you listening, probably.
we are here today to help you be less of a moron, honestly. No, but this is a big episode,
we just
actually.
lost a bunch of listeners.
This is a big, hopefully not. They should stay for the thought. Because listen, I actually don't think you and I are on different spectrums.
No.
I think we just have slightly different perspectives. And maybe this will turn into a political show.
And we should be able to have these open conversations, because I'm sick of censorship.
Aren't artists activists? Shouldn't we be?
Yeah, shouldn't we be talking about these things?
Shouldn't we be activizing?
Losers.
So today we're talking about a pretty fucking big topic, and we're going to try to be clear and move through this because this is a big one. This is all about time management for you actors out there and how to maximize your productivity in specifically 2024 with the advent of
and
AI,
not just
DVD.
actors. Let me just, because I want to expand this. I think this is really for all artists,
Totally agree.
and really anybody who's super busy,
An
but
entrepreneur.
I think that this is a
100%.
good episode on that.
And I want to say at the outset, this topic. Well, okay. Before we get into it, we're going to read a review. We got another review. So we're going to read another review before we get into this topic.
Like we said, don't text us if you like the show. Leave the review.
Yes,
okay?
please. Literally, I love the text and I love the love, but literally go to Apple, because I think Apple's like the only one you can leave a review on. This is from Miss Simone Sarah, who we know who that is.
Yes, we do. We love her.
Simone. So thank you, Simone, for this 5-star review titled "One of My Faves." Packed with sage advice, she says. Thoughtful conversations, great guests, and hilarious banter between Mike and Joshua, thank you. But
oh my God.
And she says, but it's really helpful to hear the two of them sharing personal stories and experiences about being in the business and how they also are navigating their way through just like the rest of us. That's right, folks. We are just like you. It's both comforting and a blast to listen to. Keep it up, guys.
Thank you, Simone.
No, that's great. Thank you so much, Simone. That's very sweet. Like we said, we're having a blast as well, and I know you guys are loving it. Although I can't wait for our 1-star review.
I'm excited. Well, probably coming after this episode. They spent 30 minutes talking about
Trump's probably gonna like obsess about it. He's like, who are these guys?
That'd be great.
What was that?
Listen.
That was like a Simpsons character.
Who are these guys? It's like a Down syndrome. It's like Donald Trump with Down syndrome. Who are these guys? I got problems with them.
That's a you should make an animated special. Donald Trump with Down syndrome.
That'd be good.
Okay, so let me just say, this topic for us, this is a topic for us, meaning a macro thought. I think, when we were creating this outline, I think you agree with this. We believe, maybe I really believe, but I believe you believe, artists rarely are lacking passion. Many times, not always, they're not lacking talent, right? It's often workflow, discipline, habit building. That's just the shit that tends to get in the way for most artists being able, oftentimes ourselves included,
100%.
whether it's a self-produced project or whatever it is, workflow, time management, productivity is usually the missing piece for most artists. And this has been, if I may, sorry to be tangential here, but just to set this up. When No Rules closed, you've heard me say this many times.
Which is Joshua's theater company that he
you.
ran for 7 years in DC. We get new listeners.
Yes, thank you. When my theater company closed, one of the things, the biggest reflection points was, why was every day like a constant fire? Constant. I mean, constant moving. Okay, got to raise that money. Okay, got to, cultivate that. Okay, got to go to rehearsal. And I remember thinking, this is insane. This is insane. And then when I started looking on freelance artists and going, well, they're not doing anything business principle wise, no marketing, none of that, let alone even thinking how do we manage it. The question of workflow has always been a day to day for me personally, and I would argue for this work, and I would argue, Mike, this is one of the topics that we have the most conversations about.
Yeah, and it's hard because I mean, look, I think that it's easy to come up with things to do. Most people really lack a sense of what they could do for their artistic career. Oh, self-producing. What is marketing? I mean, there is some, don't get me wrong, there's some cultural things that need to be changed. Like, oh, I should be marketing myself. Oh, building an owned audience might be good. Oh, actually having some sort of secondary income or side hustle that I can do in between times is not a bad idea. So it's not opening people's minds to sort of not just being like I do my art and then magically one day the universe will align for me and I will be able to, that is an uphill climb. But then when somebody's mind is opened to all the different ways that they can really, make something happen, this is where we spend now 95% of our struggles is how do we manage it all? How do we balance it all? And look, I mean, in a way too, that's like, we are our instruments, it's like, I was just thinking about as you were talking, it's like when we did this show and, I had some people come and everybody was talking about how wonderful you were in it. And, like how great, how great you were. Like you and I are, I think you and I are really great actors.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's anything crazy to say. I think I think we're pretty great actors, but it's like, how do you, like, it's even things like, managing all these pieces, being on the fucking computer, doing all these things while keeping creatively alive, while keeping, your artistic spirit up, like balancing the artist life and the business life at the same time. And not just in a superficial way, but deepening both of those things. Yes. Deepening them is really a big challenge.
And I would argue emotionally so. Meaning we work very closely together, and for years now, this is always the question. To your point, how do we keep the artist alive while balancing the scope of work? How do we find workflow that allows us to prioritize the person and the artist while also chasing after our goals
in a very difficult moment that requires more work than ever before, more consideration. In the 70s, they didn't have to consider nearly half the things that we have to consider now. They didn't have social media. Marketing was not the same beast it is now. Self-producing, yes, but it was not as readily available to people. I mean, like, so in this moment, we have far more considerations, and especially, and I like the point you made here, we are referencing a paper. I do think that the number one thing as we get into this today, because we're going to be offering a ton of different ideas, curiosity is key. Yes. We cannot resign ourselves to a set it and forget it mentality, which is like, once I figure out how I work, I stick to it.
Yes.
I think that there's just too many factors at play, which we'll get into.
Because we're also living in a moment, specifically with productivity, when AI is changing everything.
That's very true.
And so, if we go, oh, this is the way I work, because for example, let me give a really micro example for a moment. One of the things I know you hear it too. And in fact, I'm very similar to what I'm about to say. I hear artists always say, "Well, I like working from an analog perspective, writing paper. I don't like to sit at the computer." Totally heard. But this is a great example where, okay, but if you're trying to create 13 captions for 13 different platforms on social media, maybe you need to plug that shit into an AI tool, the basics of what you've given it, and save yourself 22 minutes. And
more.
But I'm saying this because we as artists, we have this fantastic way of going, but the way that I like to, okay. Well, it doesn't matter. What about your cupcake shop?
Well,
you might like to work that way. But you need to sell the
Exactly.
fucking cupcakes.
That's where the balance comes into play. And nobody knows. I would say most people do not have a curiosity about how they work
Right. Which is the
or
point.
have tried things, so that they don't even know what they like. And look,
Right.
what's wild, I want to say one thing before
Yep.
we move past the AI thing.
Yep.
I was reading something, Hormozy. I got a thing on Forbes, like a thing popped out in my newsfeed that was like 6 prompts Alex Hormozy suggests you use. Wild. Like, I don't even use chat. I don't really engage with AI this way.
I love Hormozy. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I think he's great. But like, well, because he's very practical, very like
Yes.
in the weeds, it feels like.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I use AI to repurpose content. I use AI to like help me brainstorm well, not even help me brainstorm things. That's not true. I just use it really to help me repurpose content and like, you know, summarize things, whatever. He was like, no, ask AI what to do. Like, you know, 3-paragraph prompt. These are my goals. This is what the market is like. What would you suggest are some daily, monthly goals I should have based off of this? And what are some action items? I mean, that's how he's like, this is how I use AI. He uses it literally to like help him strategize and plan. And
Why would
like,
you not?
why would you not?
I mean, AI has taken the world's knowledge and history. I'm not saying not all human knowledge.
No,
history
of course.
se, but circumstantial, experience, you know, real hard facts, looking at markets, and can give you information. We've used a lot of AI tools, and just to say, you know, because we as artists, we oftentimes we really want to maintain. Also, so sorry, I think I should make sure my computer's plugged in.
Okay, yeah.
One moment, folkies. I think. Oh no, I think it is. I'm just gonna double check.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I'm gonna move. I'm gonna keep talking while you do this. So, okay. So let's talk about some of the challenges of workflow. Let's get through some of this. You know, balancing an unpredictable schedule. No one week is the same. This is something that you wrote down, and it's so true. Like, you know, auditions are a great point. You've been auditioning a lot. Nobody wants me, so I haven't. But, you know, it's like you have, over the past whatever it's been, you've had like, I mean, how many auditions do you have this week? You have like fucking, you know.
No, yeah, I have 3 this week. And just to be clear, to the point about, because you're talking about how unpredictable schedule. Yeah. While I was driving home, I had 3 more hours to go. Around 5 p.m. on a Sunday, I get a audition for a Broadway replacement for a lead due tomorrow. Then today you're coming over. We're going to spend a few hours recording. I'm getting ready to do that. And then I got a guest star appointment that's due Wednesday morning. I've got a final call back Thursday morning that I've been trying to prep for along the way, all the time while trying to get ready for the show that I start next week. The point is that in the middle of this, we get these meteors constantly that are like, okay, how are you going to deal with this? And, you know, I keep saying, but I do believe preparation is the variable for success.
Right.
And all of this.
And this applies to actors, you know, but also I think to all artists, you know, when it comes to an unpredictable schedule. It's like,
right, exactly.
I mean, it like, you know, when, you know, crew call, like for film, crew calls, you know, what time's that coming? Oh, I just got this job. Oh, I just got this job working on a movie for 3 months. Okay, so now that's what my life is going to be for 3, you know.
And then to your point, you have to completely restructure, right?
You have to completely restructure.
Because we'll get into this, but I would argue part of and you and I always try to strive for this, how do we find consistency?
Right.
How do we form habits in the midst of this? Because then we have here easy to get caught up in life things, right? I mean, because not only does our schedule constantly change, but sometimes, like you've been talking about, like how you've been dating Carolina now for a few months. Well, in the beginning of all that shit, you know, it's one thing when you have a 9 to 5 and you're like, oh yeah, so we'll go on dates 2 nights of the week and on the weekends. Well, no. What if you're going to go to Coney Island on Tuesday and Wednesday? Meaning life things, just life being life.
Right.
You know, it allows us freedom. And we've talked many times about how, especially from a workflow standpoint, other people don't get it. Our families and friends don't always understand the scope of what we are doing. And I don't know about you. I have sort of always said, fuck you to that pressure. But I know lots of people who do feel burdened by that when they have outside people going, why are you doing all this? You know, you can control your schedule.
Well, what's the number one thing you hear people complain about is, you know, when they leave. Lack of structure, lack of stability, lack
Yes.
of predictability,
Accountability.
You know, it's because either A, you know, you're very busy. What about those times when there's nothing, where you know your schedule's wide open?
Sure.
But you know, the problem is when you work for and this isn't just applied to artists, this applies to everybody, entrepreneurs of all who doesn't work for somebody else.
Right.
When you work for yourself, your schedule all of a sudden is not, your time is yours, but it's also not yours, because if a client wants to talk at whatever time, you talk to the client. If you know, if you score that contract, now all of a sudden that's what take you. So it's a constant balance between, with the unpredictability. What's very exhausting about this is a balance between somebody else owning your time and then you completely owning your time. Nobody owning your time. So it's like when I'm in a show, a lot of my time is owned by somebody else.
100%.
Right? But then when the show's over, nobody owns my time. I own all my time. And that's completely like, it's a wide open.
And it's a mind fuck.
It's a mind fuck.
Because part of what you're getting at, which we also have here, is that, and actually we'll take us as an example, the ability to stay flexible and adaptable.
Right.
So, which is hard. But like, for example, we're going to talk about make or manager time later. But one of the things when we were planning out this week, we have a lot of things always going on with our work and our business and the podcast and other work that we do. But Mike, we were supposed to have a meeting today. And therefore, we were supposed to record this episode on Friday because we're recording another episode tomorrow. And you said, well, can we record the episode after this meeting so that I can hold that day for blank? And then yesterday, we got a text that said, oh, I have to shift that meeting. So then we have to recalibrate because we have to still do this. And then that time that you wanted to reserve sort of goes out the window. And just to say that when we need consistency in habits, staying flexible and adaptable
exactly
is also hard to build,
because you're
habits.
Fucking with other people who have unpredictable schedules too.
Exactly.
In this business, you're not fucking with people who have predictable schedules. You're fucking people. So that's why the flexibility and the adaptability is important. So once you think you lock something in, now look, we'll get to the power of no, which is something you included later. You can't say yes to every fucking thing that comes up. In fact, you should probably be saying no to most things. But still, there's always a level of having to be flexible within it. So just when you think you've locked something in and you're like, great, this is what my life's going to look like at least for the next week, or this is what I'm doing tomorrow. So many things happen, which make it hard to stay on it, and so that's another big challenge. This is a big one for me. A big reason why workflow is so challenging is because we have to deal with short-term and long-term. So the easiest example to give is, I have to pay my bills now, so I need money now, which means that, maybe I'm going to go have a survival job. Maybe I have to go do while I'm also not resigning myself to, if you want to build a creative career, not resigning having a heart attack.
You do. I just think move over to the computer and keep working.
Yeah, not just resigning yourself to short term, but also going, okay, while I am having to do these things in the short term to just get by, how am I also growing a larger legacy? Another example of that would be when you're in a show. When you're doing, it's easy. It's so easy when you're a show to just resign yourself to the short term of I'm doing this, Well, that job will end just like everything else. Right. How are you preparing yourself for the next thing? There's always going to be an audition that pops up. How are you not just upending your whole entire life schedule to deal with that short-term need while you're also growing things for the long term? And another example of this, I would argue, is growing what we encourage people to do, which is have diverse income streams.
Yes.
You need to have diverse income streams to deal with both short-term and long-term needs, I would say. So it's like, this is another reason why workflow is so challenging, because we have so many different things that are so many different activities, things that are dealing with different timelines or covering completely different bases.
Well, what you're getting at and what we're going to get to as well, and we're going to spend a lot of time actually talking about it in this episode, is prioritization, because that's the game of it too.
Right.
how to your point, how do you prioritize? Oh, I need to make $400 extra this week,
Exactly.
but I also need to prepare this audition for this thing that really means a lot to me, and I have this meeting with this potential donor in 2 weeks, and I need to prepare this pitch. So
Right.
what gets my time and attention?
This next one is, I think, really a big one too. Is the wide open canvas, the many paths. Another reason why it's very difficult, workflow is hard, is because there's no clear path to building an artistic career,
Right.
to making a money from your art, to being able to make art and live comfortably. There's no way there.
Well, this is where Hormozy's wrong, and
Okay.
I want to be clear. If you typed in a prompt into AI,
Sure.
given the history of the entertainment industry, specifically acting, here are my goals. I want to be starring in a Broadway show. I want to be a series, whatever the goals are, 5-10 years out. Give me a breakdown of what the next few years looks like. I promise you that what that AI spits out is probably not only going to be very general and generic, but probably
course.
wrong.
Yeah.
Because, and I added this addendum to when you would put this in here, that unlike most other businesses,
Sure.
there is no obvious blueprint for success. Therefore, on top of us needing to balance what you're saying, the open canvas of what do I focus on now, it's trial by error.
Yes.
Or trial by fire, whatever that is.
No, and it's gonna be different for everybody, and so it's very hard to commit to a specific kind of workflow, a specific kind of schedule, even priorities.
Right.
When not only is there a wide open canvas, but something that we did not write here, but I just want to make a point on, is that this, especially now, this industry is in a completely, I mean, all industries are, but in this moment with tech, industry changes in all industries are happening at an exponential rate. So when you would see cycles every maybe 5 years, with a business, 10 years, now they're happening like every 3 months. Yeah. There's just so much change happening all the time with tech and exponential growth that it is difficult to know what to prioritize, where to spend your time, what should be getting your attention, and what the work actually is 100%. In this moment. Okay, so those are just a few of the challenges I would say when it comes to, again, wait, before we even, because we didn't really talk about this, what is workflow? When we're talking about those are the challenges to workflow, we did not really do this, is what is workflow? I'll tell you what I see workflow as. I see workflow, and this is not a very specific, I didn't prepare a very clear definition of it. I would say it's what you're doing, how you're spending and what you're doing and how you're spending your time and how you're doing those things. Like a combination of all three of those things. It's what you're doing, how you're spending your time. That's probably, those are the two main things. I would also kind of say like how you're doing what you're doing too, but it's really what you're doing, how you're spending your time. That to me is workflow. And in order to create
based on what your goals are and how you're effectively accomplishing the micro steps to meeting them.
Well, and this is where I think I get a little more expansive than you. And even when we were preparing this, it's because it's not just your business, I would argue. Even though we're going to be mainly talking about it in the terms of, your artistic career, but it's everything. I would say that workflow extends to also, I have to do my laundry today on top of.
Yeah, there's a very thin line between for entrepreneurs between real life and business.
Correct.
And so, sorry, I cut you off, but it's because I agree with you. It's like, how do you live life, foster relationships? And for artists and actors in particular, it's not just like, oh, I'm going to obsess over my coffee mugs. Oh, I'm all in. No, I am the coffee mug.
Right.
So it's how do I do my laundry and also make sure I can fit in the clothes for the laundry that I'm doing, and all of that.
Yeah,
shit.
while also doing, and it's funny because as we're sort of moving into this next part here, which is how do we manage time effectively in order to maximize workflow, I just want to say, to give you some, and I think it's going to be a very wide range of things. And I just want to say at the top, I think that skip the beginning of this, we'll see if America's around in a little bit, but like, I think this is probably an episode that I would listen to a couple times.
Yes, good point.
Because we're going to be talking about a bunch of things that you can do all at once. You could try one thing, but
Yes.
we're going to be kind of giving a plethora of ideas here,
Yes.
and really practical strategies,
Right.
I think, for people to consider. But there is not a clear system, step 1 to step 20, because I don't think that you can lay that out, because I think it's near impossible to do that. I think the closest that gets to that in a lot of ways is David Allen's Getting Things Done, because he doesn't keep it to tools. He keeps it to first principles in terms of
Sure.
workflow.
Sure.
So no matter what the technology is, no matter what like sort of micro ways of working you're using, the strategies, the sort of big principles are always the same.
But here's what you're good at that other people often are not. And I'm sure many of you listening will agree with this. And this is where you and I have had a back and forth. You in particular are good at taking someone like David Allen's Getting Things Done, which is a great book, absorbing those principles and going, okay, how do I turn this into a process for myself that works for me? Many artists lack that ability, or more specifically, are seemingly unwilling to be curious.
I think that's the second.
Because I'm not trying to come for you all out there.
Instant
but
gratification.
we hear, and people, we live in a mode, just give me something. So I'm saying this because, like, I have always had the impulse to be more prescriptive, because artists can have a tendency to be a bit helpless sometimes. But I actually think what you're saying is the better way. So I might be just regurgitating, but in this episode, if you listen and you listen again, or you listen every few months, stay curious, which was the point you were making. Try things. We're not going to say do every single one of these, because they're not all going to work for everybody. They're really not.
Well, and that's the thing is, if you listen to anybody, I realize that my problem in life, because I appreciate you saying that, has been everything's a framework. There's no truth. I know this is like, what the fuck are you talking about? But it's like, you'll hear entrepreneurs give, hey, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5 things all the time. Or entrepreneurs. I mean, like, whatever, business coaches, executive coaches, workflow. But then they'll say something else, a completely different step by step. And my problem has always been going, well, which one is it? Which one? Is it that one or is it this one? No, it's all different frameworks to get to the same, just like acting.
Sure.
Acting teachers contradict themselves all the fucking time. It's like that, but because life is not a fucking step-by-step system. Where step-by-step systems can be really useful is that they allow you to try it on. You try on that process and view it through that framework.
Right.
And so before we even get into these processes here, I think it's really important to talk about this next point, which is, okay, what the fuck? So if there's a million ways you can do it, and you need to try on different processes, different frameworks, astrology is not more true than religion, is not more true than science, is not more true than any. They're all different frameworks to discover what, right? So all of these different frameworks that we're about to discuss, what are they getting at here? And this is where I really think Getting Things Done is special, is because to me, it defines really well what the goal is, which is, he says, ease and confidence that the things you want to get done will get done when they need to get done. That is what we are chasing.
Yeah.
I think that is a phenomenal, because ease, confidence that the things we want to get done will get done when they need to get done. Basically, is, he defines this thing, and I'm going to read this, as an open loop, which that's everything he frames. He says, consider, and this is what I think the first step is as well in general. A really helpful first step potentially. Mm-hmm. Get clear on what's going on and organize. So consider all the open loops in your life. All the open loops in your life. What's an open loop? An open loop are all of the things that are unfinished in your life. Things that take up time and energy. Mm-hmm. He has this phenomenal analogy that I've never heard. It's like a computer, right? A computer, what you see on the screen is the conscious mind. So that's all the things that you can see, that you're thinking about. And then there's the RAM, which is everything else. Hundreds and hundreds of gigabytes of shit happening in the background, right? That we don't even process. That's a subconscious. And he says that, and which I agree, distraction is when things from the subconscious come in and go, you have to do this. Don't forget that. What about this? What about that? And when you don't have a system to deal with everything in your life that's unfinished, and we'll get more on that. That is what causes distraction and stress. Is when
and for many people stops them from then doing anything.
Exactly,
they freeze in their tracks.
So, what are some examples of open loops? This could be an unanswered email. That's an open loop, because now that is something that needs to be dealt with. That is taking up.
It's like residue sitting in your brain.
Exactly. Residue is a great way of putting it, sitting in your brain. It could be a bigger dream or goal. You know what? I would love to be on Broadway one day. Well, that's now a big That's a big open loop
that you haven't maybe dealt with.
That needs to be dealt with. It's something that you've identified, and now it's that's much bigger than answering an email, but they both have the same concept. Something that you have identified that needs to be dealt with, that now is taking up residue in your brain.
Yep.
Another thing could be a film you want to watch or a book you want to read. That's an open loop. Think about how often you're saying, I need to watch that TV show. I want to read that book. Or I got it, Now, if you don't have somewhere to deal with that,
right?
If that is not dealt with in some way, then what's going to happen is it's going to fucking come up at random moments. And it's going to come in like a virus to your computer screen and fuck something up. Right. It's going to derail you.
Distract you, and it's going to create worry and angst.
Create worry, angst, stress.
Yes.
But when these open loops are being dealt with through a system,
right,
the stress becomes much less.
Right.
Another, just two examples here. Could be something you want to do for fun. I'd love to go. You know what I keep saying? I want to go to New Orleans someday. I've always said,
so do we.
I would love to go to New Orleans. Where's that being dealt with? Anywhere.
I know. I keep saying I want to go white river rafting. Seriously. And you're like, well, okay, well, what's the? Because it comes up and then it annoys you, doesn't it?
You're like, I do
for
want
fuck's
that.
sake, I really want to go try to kill myself on some
exactly.
Grand
No,
Rapids.
and people keep and the thing is again, where is that being dealt with? Where am I dealing with? And by the way, right now for me, nowhere. Where am I dealing with New Orleans? Where am I dealing with the fact that I want to go? Where is it?
Right.
So this is an example of something that's like, that's an open loop in my life.
Yep.
The final example I'll give is, something physical open loops. The stack of bills.
Right.
That need to be dealt with.
Yes.
The mess over, the thing that what the fuck is that? I'll deal with it later. That thing over there. My plant's dying. Whatever. All the physical.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about environment, but you're so right.
All the physical things that are, and
yes.
so all of these things, what I love about David Allen's book, Getting Things Done, and I cannot recommend it more, is that he goes, this is what we need to do. We need to look at all of these open loops and we need to deal with them. So what he suggests is organizing, and I'm being very general right now.
Sure.
Because I don't want to get into hyper minutiae here. The first thing is you need to organize all of these things into different buckets, right? So because what organization is, and I have the exact definition somewhere because it's such a good definition of what organization is. It's I don't have it. So basically, I'm going to butcher this. Organization is where the thing is in direct correspondence with what it means to you. Mm-hmm. So let me give you an example. your email. This is a great example. A lot of people use their email inboxes as staging grounds. So what's mixed in there is emails that I've read, but maybe I've marked them as unread because I haven't dealt with them yet, and then spam, and then a bunch of emails I haven't read. That is not well organized. The reason why that's not well organized is because all of those things mean different things.
So, for example, you could have an email from your tax accountant, making this up, that appears, but then above it is 7 emails that you keep meaning to get back to. And if you don't ever get back to it, then the one that's buried 7 below that you needed to respond to 2.5 weeks ago doesn't even have the potential to be dealt with because there isn't actually a system to even care for all of it.
That is exactly correct. So organization means putting things in relation to what they mean to you.
Right.
So that is what it means to create different buckets. Now, by the way, how you organize these things, we have a 5-year plan is one way that we organize some of these things, but you could do this you can create notes on your phone. So, he identifies things like projects. So having all of your projects in one area, whether it could be a whole notebook, don't recommend that, but a whole notebook where you keep all your projects.
I think this definition is good. Just to be clear, a project is anything that requires more than one immediate next action to be dealt with. I want to do that short film. Well, that's a project.
Yep.
There's not one clear, email Susie and then the project's done.
The toilet's broken. That's a project because it requires more than one
to the store.
Exactly. Or calling the landlord, organizing a time, whatever these are examples of projects.
Yes.
So the first thing you need to identify is what are all of the projects? And again, these are things that require more than one immediate next action to be dealt with.
Yes.
What I would then encourage you to do is then to organize those projects. So, okay, these are all the projects related to my business. These are all the projects related to my home. These are personal projects. Learning Italian is a personal project, right? These are all examples of, one thing I suggest you do is that you identify these projects and then organize these project lists.
Yep.
That's an example of something to do. Then next actions. So next actions are things that, that are separate from projects. They can be related to projects, but these are things that just need one immediate next step. So an example would be, I want to get a haircut. Really, the next step, there's really only one thing to do. Schedule it. That's really all I need
100%.
to do. There's only one action I need to take.
Send rent check.
Send rent check. Exactly. Sometimes a lot of emails are just immediate next. Respond and just say thank you.
Absolutely.
So these are examples of, and by the way, when you start to get into projects, what's helpful about projects is you need to identify what's so overwhelming. We'll get this when we talk about breaking down long-term things into short-term things. Break down the long-term things into immediate next actions is always very helpful. Mm-hmm. But, a lot of open loops. Oh, throw this in the garbage.
Right.
That's an immediate next action.
Right.
So separate your projects that are larger things, and they don't have to be huge, but like larger things that require a couple of steps, and from the things that that are not connected to larger projects, that just require one step.
Yes.
Right? Then the final thing here is things that you want to do in the future. So these could be projects, but these are mainly projects, but learning Italian. I don't really have time to learn Italian right now. Go to New Orleans. I don't really have time to I don't have the capacity to think through New Orleans right now.
But you know that it's something in the future
I would like
to
do. So let me once I've kind of identified these projects.
We call these someday maybes.
Yeah, someday maybes. Let me put these projects, because they're mainly projects, let me organize all of those things into a separate pile.
And you want to know what I love about this? Because we've talked about it let me give you an example of this too. There are so many concerts, themes of, the Cancel Me concert, the women, I have all these concerts I want to do. And they sit in my head. Well, what happens is that I now have a someday maybe where it's like, okay, I'll put these concert idea there. We're going to talk about reviewing your work at another time. But the number of times in my reviews I go, oh, no, I don't want to do that anymore. That's why it's a someday maybe. But what I love about it is that it's somewhere for me to even consider. And circumstances
Exactly.
have changed and go, I'm not going to do that one. And so I'm just going to remove that. Or, oh, you know what? That's a perfect time to do that thing. You know?
Well, you just said it, which is the cornerstone, we'll get to it, of I think all workflow is reviewing. Because you said it. It's about considering. It's somewhere. This great fucking thing I wanted to do, this idea I wanted to do, it's somewhere where at least I can consider it at some point. And that already takes so much. That to me, if people just did that, if they just kept track of their open loops, it would take off probably, in my experience, it relieves like 30% of pressure already and stress.
Because you know where shit goes. Well, actually, talk about this next point. Because people are going, okay, because these all sound well in theory, but this point is really fucking important.
Well, once you have identified all of these things, whether they're projects, whether they're someday maybes, and I would even argue, review reads. So I have a review read article thing I do where it's like things I want to look at, books I want to read, movies, trips I want to, all of these things. When you've identified the projects, you've identified the next actions. Okay, the next step is to go put them into some sort of storing receptacle. So for me, I'll give you an example. I use a combination, I would say, of my plans, my 5-year plans, and my notes apps. So my 5-year plans kind of stores all of my actor business shit. All of my actor business projects are contained within my 5-year plan, which is an Excel sheet we use. If people are into that, email us and we'll give you a copy of it. But so that's where I keep all of my business projects. I have a couple notes on my phone that are like movies I want to watch, books I want to read, right? So I have different notes for that. I also have larger apartment projects that I need to do. Oh, I need to get that thing. So store these things into categories. And then it is useful to have a next actions list. And we'll get into how you utilize this, but okay, you can organize your next actions list potentially. It could just be like a rolling to-do list of all of these separate things, right? And it's just a massive to-do list. Or you can have a to-do list for your business based off of your next actions. You could have a to-do list based off of your apartment. Sometimes you can organize these next actions by context. So this is my next actions list for the next time I'm at my computer. This is the next actions list for the next time I'm at home. But you need to start having separating these things, separating them into different places.
Well, you said it. One of the words that he also uses, and I want to go to the movies I want to watch as an example of this, is a capture system, which is, while it's slightly separate from this, a good example is, I have a folder on my notes app, movies to watch, which I do, things to watch, or comfort food performances. I have a notes app there, so as I'm watching things, I go and I throw comfort food, because we record a lot of these. So when we do comfort food performances, I don't want to be like Mike and come up with it on the spot. So I want, just kidding. No, but literally it's like, oh, that's an example of a capture system.
Right.
Where does shit go? And I even have a capture notes app, Mike.
Yes, I do too.
That means I'll go look at that, and that might go elsewhere.
Well, I actually do want to briefly say this.
Yeah.
What's helpful about a capture system is could be a piece of paper, could be a note on your phone, something. When anything pops into your brain, you immediately write it down.
You've seen me write several things down while we're recording.
Now, what's the next step, though? Right? So you write these things down. Then what Josh was saying, which is so key, is then you need to process it at some point and then organize it. Get clear about what it is. So if Mom's birthday's coming up. Mom's birthday. I write that down. The second it comes to my head, I write it down somewhere. Exactly. I then have a job. Okay, do I move that into my projects list? Okay, first off, I need to identify exactly I need to get clear about. Mom's birthday doesn't mean anything. Exactly. I want to throw Mom a birthday party. Okay, that's a project.
Right.
Throwing Mom's birthday party. Now I can move that. I can organize it into my projects list, and I'm gonna get ahead of something right now before we move on. This sounds like a lot already, and we're barely scratching the surface.
Yeah, really.
This is how elite people spend their time.
Exactly.
This is how we have talked to many people. I've listened to many people talk about this. People, high performers, spend their time getting this fucking clear about their systems because
I dare someone, going back to the point we made at the very top of this about hating Hillary Clinton. No, I'm just kidding. I'll go back to the point we made at the very top of this. This, I believe, is the missing piece for artists. I don't think it's money. I don't even think it's confidence. I don't think certainly it's not a fucking agent or manager. I don't think it's, a better headshot. You are struggling in your creative career because of your inability to manage your time effectively.
And to be disciplined around a system.
Period. I really do believe this.
I don't disagree with that. I'll never forget, we were talking to somebody who was a great patron of the arts. You know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Who's made a lot of fucking money.
Yep.
Who's very successful, self-made man.
Yep.
And I remember I asked him, I said, what do you think separates you from other people? And he goes, I spend most of my time thinking about how I'm going to spend my time.
Yeah.
Which seems so counterintuitive because you think that doing, which look, you won't hear us decry doing.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is if you're always in a reactionary state and you are not taking complete ownership of your life and how you are spending your time, then you are really, you're floundering.
And we kind of said this, but I just want to underline this point because I think you'd agree with it. I am openly in a constant state of trying to understand the best flow for myself.
Exactly.
Because I'm not a master of this by any means.
By no means.
But
much better.
Here's what's frustrating, and I know you agree with this. We are both incredibly talented, highly capable people, like many of you. Where I get frustrated with myself is because I haven't yet sometimes cracked a code to accomplish more that I know I'm capable of. And it is not about morning, noon, and night killing myself working. No, it's about crafting the most effective system to care for the things that I care about in my life, which is everything from my mind and my body to Michael to whatever the hell it is, to my art, to the work, in order to maximize, to your point about what separates the Tim Ferrisses and the Hormozis and the Gary V's, what separates those people is their ability to go, how am I most effectively considering the use of my time and resources to make my life all the better?
And one thing I want to throw out there that we are not taught in there is not, you didn't say doing 400 things.
No, I did not.
You did not say doing everything, doing 400 things at the same time. That is not. In fact,
it could include, out of those 400 things, doing 12 of them. Just to be clear. And where you and I think, have a similar quote unquote struggle or problem is sometimes our eyes are bigger than our stomachs.
Correct.
Sometimes the opposite. But where it's like, we want to do it all. And we believe, and we know, and that's the thing. We know
that's a lack of discipline. But that's a lack of discipline.
Exactly.
And the thing about this system and because what we have done so far, in this, even what I've just outlined, is you've externalized all of these things. We're getting them out of our brains.
Right.
The number one key to productivity is getting things out of your mind, so that you can keep your mind. That's why I love David Allen, because he talks about it this way. I like that definition. Flow, baby. Yeah. Get out of your ease. You don't want your brain full of shit. Trust in a.
I trust, because what do we hear? Actually, that's a phrase I hear a lot with artists. I don't trust that I'm going to do it. I don't trust myself that I'm going to do it.
And when you've externalized these things and you've gotten them out of your brain, you have taken a good step to have an open mind. And you are now starting to go, okay, now how am I going to make sure that external system is as effective as it can be and reflective of what I really want my life to be?
Well, this sort of takes us into, in my opinion, part of where this begins.
Yes.
Along with getting it out there, you talked about the big goals, but now let's get into some of the micro of workflow by way of starting at the macro, which is simply, and I think you and I maybe have different thoughts about this. I don't know, but I want to just be clear. What are your goals?
Correct.
So again, It could be a macro one. I'm trying to build the sustainable creative career of my dreams. Okay, well, what does that even consist of? A, because those are goals. Oh, it's making X amount of money. It's getting out of debt here. It's making these relationships. It's having these people on my team. I don't care. What are your goals? Because starting with your goals, getting back to that idea, that 5-year plan that we work from, the template that we have, it allows you to break your work down into simply more manageable tasks.
Yes.
That's just ABC.
Well, look, the reason what I will use that I think is just to keep with the language, which we don't have, but one thing I'm taking from that too is horizons, in the sense of, he talks about there being different horizons of focus, right? There's the big horizon, and then there's like you're ground at your feet, because you can have a goal which is like, get in the room for that audition. That's, per your point, based off of, but what's the larger goal? Oh, the larger goal is I want to be on Broadway. Okay, well, what's the larger goal to that? Right? So in terms of goal setting, why it's so important is
the vision for your creative self, whatever the hell.
The legacy you want to leave behind.
Exactly.
So you should be getting clear. What I think you're so right about is, what's the macro goal? What is the macro goal of your life? And then one thing I really want to say here, which I can't remember, we have so much shit here. One thing that I don't know if we talk about here is, but I want to say it. Okay. You have the macro goal of the legacy you want to leave behind, the artistic. I would then say, okay, well, what's the next goal? Is probably some sort of, I would argue, overall strategy. This is 99% of artists do not do this. I wasn't. Getting fucking clear about how, okay, great. I want to be an actor. I want to be an actor and I want to make money acting. Great. What's your strategy in terms of the overall goal?
And I'm not sure if this is an AKA for you, but what is it going to take to help? What is it really going to take? And what's the most strategic way to do that?
I'm going to do it by, shitty example, potentially. I want to do that by becoming the next big thing in independent film, which means that I need to be probably producing, directing, and starring and writing in my own movies, That is my strategy. I do not move on to the next goals until I hit that goal, because that is going to be how I break in. This already, we want to do everything. I want to be in TV. I want to be in film. I want to do restoration comedies. I want to do I think that an important thing is to go, great. I understand that I want to make art and be an actor. Great. What is the thing below that? What is your weight? Where are you trying to corner? Where are you trying to scale? Getting and committing to it. And one thing I would say that's helpful is to identify that for yourself, is view it as what we view our overall marketing strategy as. What makes me unique and in what context?
Sure.
So it's not just what makes you special. It's where are those skills going to stand out the most?
Right. Well, that's exactly.
As skills and whatever, because that's where you should be spending your time. You shouldn't be trying to. You can have anything you want. You can't have everything you want. Exactly. So I could really focus on independent film and like new works in theater. That is probably not the best use of my best use of my time. Is to go, where can I really, based off of my unique skill sets, but also who I am, what my values are, where are those going to make the most resounding impact? 100%. And let me focus my attention there.
100%. So, okay. So I want to talk about, probably in my opinion, we're going to talk about some specific time management and workflow tools, but I want to talk about probably what comes up again and again and again and again and again and again and again in all of this.
Yes.
And that is the ability to prioritize.
Yes.
And this is tough.
Yes.
Because it's a personal decision. Artists, again, I think, like a lot of times, to be told what to do. And so, but in all of this, we will repeat, try this for yourself. Try some of these things out. Ask yourself the tough questions. Your priorities are not going to be the same as Sally's priorities. But
yes,
it will likely start the ability to prioritize by having long-term goals that then you can then break down, because then you can see if that work simply even aligns with your vision. Let me give you an example.
Yes.
Remember, we always use, I'm going to give a random one. We've talked with this person before. Oh, I want to be a Marvel star. Okay. So you want to be a Marvel star. So then you go, so that's that's what you say you want to do.
I want to be the next big superhero and whatever the fuck.
Right. Well, if that's the goal, then as we've talked about, oh, well, I need to either be a lead at Sundance or I need to build a massive audience that's going to allow for me to get some sort of recognition. Oh, well, I don't want to do that. I'm making this up. Okay, so you don't want to do that. Yeah, my values don't lift up to that priority. Okay, well then is that your goal? So that's why I'm saying goals are important to then help you do exactly kind of what you were just saying, which is to align to say, well, this is what this is what my strategy.
Right, because if you're saying like, if somebody goes, what's so hard is saying no as an actor. And look, and this is where balancing short-term and long-term, this is, again, one of the many challenges we've listed.
It is.
Does it make sense for you to go do Ado Annie at, Bucks County Playhouse where you really think you're trying to be like the next, like, if you really think that your way, how you're really going to break out is through the indie film market? Does it make sense for you to go do that Ado Annie thing? No, it does not. But then again, Health Week's paying your bills. This is where, right, we have to consider, and this is why reviewing, which we'll get to in a moment, is so important because priorities are constantly shifting. Well, if you need to pay rent this month, then maybe you have to go take that job.
It's so funny because what I didn't say about, by the time this episode comes out, this other show I'm about to do will be come and gone. But this television show that I got this thing for would potentially take me out of nearly a week of rehearsal, which would basically take me out of the show. But this television show was A, one that I've been on before, B, it's really just cash, but it's also guest star. We know those are cash in the bank. Why am I saying this? Well, I would actually argue that the play is of more benefit to my long-term future than the $10,000 or $11,000 I would make on the TV show. I should probably say no to the TV show. But at the same time, to your point, there's this balance of the show. We never want, but it's TV, right? But it's a procedural. But it's cash. But then, do you see what I'm saying?
Of course. Well, yeah. Does it really make sense for you to say no to it? Like,
right.
If you were
I'll probably make 3 times the amount of money doing the TV show that I in 1 week that I would the play. But I'm probably going to burn a lot more bridges that could help me in the future.
No, this is the challenge. And it's like, well, this is why, people don't want to commit to, I say, an overall strategy, which is what makes you unique and to whom. And to the whom implies to me is what market are you really trying to break into? And I would get as hyper specific as I'm the Chicago storefront theater scene. That is where I'm going to pull a Michael Shannon. I'm going to become a fucking star, working my way up in Chicago. Commit. Then you have to fucking commit.
Right. And that means, like, I'm thinking about you with that tour that recently you auditioned for.
So not aligned with my overall marketing
but I
strategy.
Get it because you'd be great in it and huge cash. But then it's the same question. It's like, well, what am I doing that for? Money? Well, that's important. But to your point, if I'm trying to grow an X, Y, or Z career, what if I did that for 3 years? Would that actually move the needle?
Well, probably not.
But then I would have cash in the bank.
Exactly. Well, this is where
priorities.
Well, and this is where, and what I would argue is, listen, I'm skipping ahead here a little bit.
Okay.
But the reason why I love David Allen too is because, look, basically his whole argument is that if you have a system that you trust, if things are off of your brain,
right,
being dealt with externally, and you are constantly reviewing, which we'll get to, then prioritization, then it's really grace. Prioritization is grace. You're able to make decisions with a clear head.
Sure.
There is no 1 + 1 = 2 with prioritization. There's too many elements at play. But if you have an open, clear mind, which means not having all of these things that it doesn't mean like going, well, I'm having an open, clear mind, so fuck everything. I don't think that that's the way to go. It's having an open, clear mind by making sure that things are dealt with somewhere. Well, you can behave, in a more intuitive, you can prioritize intuitively. But the problem is that when you are stressed, you are reactionary. When you are, operating from a place of panic and anxiety, you cannot prioritize in an intuitive
Absolutely.
way.
Well, and I just want to say that this is why one of the things that we've talked about for so many years too is the interconnected nature, again, like any other business, of our creative careers. Meaning, no, I don't need to come up with a fucking VO reel, or maybe I do, but why? Why am I
Exactly.
putting myself on tape for this commercial agent? Now, I personally like cash, so I'm happily, but I want to understand where that fits into. Which, when I look at actors' websites, commercial, VO, dramatic. What the fuck are you doing?
Right.
Or, oh, I'm going to make TikToks because everyone's on TikTok. Okay, well wait. How does this relate
Right.
to the point of like what's the rest of your work?
Right.
So the reason how this continues to go on with prioritization is from the long-term goals, you can break down those short-term goals that are more manageable. And here are some ways that you could consider how you can prioritize. You could consider creating a daily list and a weekly list, right? So a daily list of things that could be of a priority to you could be prepping an audition. This is a big one for me. When I have auditions coming up, it's not that I need to spend 4 hours on it. It's that I need to touch it every single day. For me, it's 6 days out. Okay, I'm going to touch the audition. That's a priority for me. Or I'm going to practice an instrument or exercise or meal prep. What are the things that are daily priorities for you? Versus what are things that are weekly priorities for you? That could also be some of those same things, but it also could be social media content creation, right? Or as we've said, that this is going to be the day when I do we promote this. I do this personally. Thursdays are my financial day. So that's an example of a weekly piece that I do once a week. I sit down and I look at my money. Or that's going to be the day that I do my relationship building.
So I just want to be clear,
Please.
because it starts off, what you're saying to start off on is that is setting some consistent priorities.
Sure, absolutely.
That's what, and how are you determining those things? Again, I would identify your long-term goals. Think about all the things it might take for you to achieve those things, and then that might inform some of the daily routines. What you're really talking about are routines right now.
Sure.
So you prioritize your routines. What are your non-negotiable routines?
Sure.
So I always have daily, I go to based off of my goals, I always exercise 30 minutes at least a day. I meal prep every Sunday. And those things, but the whole point of identifying those things and why you can't have too many of them is because I would argue is we're talking about prioritization. Those are non-negotiables.
Sure.
Those are
Yeah.
and why we're putting them under prioritization is because it doesn't matter what else I have to do unless it is truly something where, like, you know, I book something and I have a show where it's like I'm really obligated to somebody else. Everything else works around when 2:00 on Friday hits. That's the priority. No matter what the fuck else is going on, that is and that's why you can't have too many of these. You cannot have,
because then you'll start to feel overwhelmed.
Well, you'll have no time for anything else.
You'll have no time for anything else. And listen, this is I'll talk more about my personal, one of my favorite ways of working a little bit, but this is a constant reflection because yes, there are weeks when I would love to play. I love playing the piano. I love sitting down and playing the piano.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can't. But the truth is that even though it's a priority for me, sometimes other priorities went out.
So that's the thing. Is that a non-negotiable? I think one of the things
not a non-negotiable.
I think what we're trying to get at here is identifying some routines that are non-negotiable, daily and weekly.
Exercise, I would argue, at this point in my life, at the tender age of 28, you know, it's a non-negotiable. And I'm an old woman. I literally on my watch, I'm like, have I hit my 30 minutes?
No,
at least 30 minutes of exercise. And if I have to get up 30 minutes earlier to do it, so be it.
No, that's exactly. So you cannot have too many of these.
Sure. Exactly.
That's step one when it comes to priorities. And
yes.
How are you determining those things? I cannot.
Well, we're going to continue to go through some of this.
Sure, but with those things specifically, the non-negotiable things that you are really determining.
Personal.
It's personal. I think it comes with which we'll get to reflection. We will get to, but it really comes from looking at your long-term goals, things like that. But let's talk about this, which I think is a phenomenal place to start. And this blows my mind. Prioritization. Time-sensitive items first. This is a fantastic example. And this is something you talked about getting things done that blew my mind. So if I have, let's say, a client or a meeting coming up with somebody on Wednesday, and I have 2 hours today, what's non-negotiable is I need to prep for that meeting. But before Wednesday. If the meeting's on Wednesday, I need to prep for it before Wednesday.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if I don't really give a shit about the meeting. It doesn't matter if there's actually more things that feel more important to me. I would then argue then, why do you have the meeting? If there are things that are really more important to you, you probably shouldn't be meeting with the person.
Right.
But it doesn't matter what the fuck else is going on. I have to find time to prep for that before Wednesday.
Absolutely.
So if you have a time-sensitive item, an audition is a great example. An audition has a deadline. It is a time-sensitive item. So you need to schedule.
I might not really care about it.
Exactly. You might not really give a shit. Again, I would then argue, well, you know, is it really worth your time?
Well, it depends because like I went on with that one last week that I'm going back in for this week, but that had more to do with the long-term office. I don't care about the show.
Exactly.
But
sure.
I care about the relationship.
But the thing is okay, so you had your audition. You needed to find time to prep it. That is that is now a non-negotiable.
Yes.
And this is why you can't have too many external commitments. You can't have too many external commitments because then your time's gonna be filled up with external, like, you know, oh, I need to prep for that thing, or oh, taxes. Perfect example. It doesn't matter if you don't give a shit about filing your taxes. That has a due date. So you need to find the time. You need to schedule in your calendar.
Right.
And it's not, again, this is not based off of a feeling. This is based off of time, a date and time sensitive task.
Well, and side tangent to say, it's important that I say this, and I don't mean to be tangential here, Mike, but I want to see if you agree that this relates. You're saying this is not based on a feeling. Well, what about the things that we say mean something to us? I mean, I know you're quite literally talking about circumstantial. Oh, I've got a meeting with Sandy at 1 about cleaning the lawn, whatever. But there are a lot of artists out there who, when it comes to workflow, they let themselves get so feeling based around it. The things that they say mean something so much to them. And then they get distracted or they, oh, fuck it, I don't care. And the reason why I'm just bringing this up in relation to it is because I would argue that part of what you're bringing up is a slight sense of detachment from the things that we say we need to accomplish. And in our work, sometimes it's going to be more fun to write, 8 pages of that feature you've been meaning to do. Even if that's kind of tough, that might be more fun than sending out 12 self pitches or to do the work for an agent and manager, whatever the hell it is.
Well, the thing is that you're getting at here is, I think it's important to say, is that if something is really important to you at feelings wise, but not calendar wise, then you need to make it calendar important. So here's what I mean.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean just I'll schedule 2 hours just because that has no real consequence, because now priorities are constantly shifting. I could schedule 2 hours to work on X, but if I have no real consequences of it, it doesn't matter. I'm scheduled a meeting with the director in 2 weeks. Now that has become a date and time sensitive task.
Right.
Now that is a date and time sensitive task. And it has nothing to do with how I feel. The fact is I have that meeting. I need to prepare for it. I need to have X, Y, and Z in place before the meeting. So now I can schedule the time to prep for that meeting. So if you really care about something and it's not moving along, a great step is to create a consequence around it. And to make it a date and time sensitive task, not just willy-nilly based off of a willy-nilly. I would like to have this finished by July 15th, but I need to have this finished by July 15th because that deadline is coming up.
Well, this is a trick I do with self-producing all the time.
Exactly. You do this a lot.
Because if I'm self-producing something, I like to bring other people, and I encourage other people to do this too sometimes when they struggle to hold themselves accountable, myself included. Well, if I bring someone else in or if I have that meeting, then I have to have that pitch ready or I have to have such and such ready. It's really helpful. So I was reading about Dwight D. Eisenhower, one of our presidents, was very productive. And so the Eisenhower matrix, which is something that many people use, is something he created and people studied because he was really good at juggling all kinds of tasks, morning, noon, and night. And I think this is another good metric for prioritization. Is the task, the thing you're trying to accomplish, urgent and important? If so, you probably need to do that task immediately. Is it important but not urgent? Well, then you might schedule that task, per your point about taxes. You might be looking 3 months out, whatever. Urgent but not important. Well, can you delegate those tasks? So if it's not important, but it is urgent, then what might you be able to do? Actually, taxes is a great example of that. Well, that is important, but I think my accountant, not urgent and not important. Well, then you probably shouldn't be doing those taxes. We're going to talk about review
those tasks.
Yeah. Excuse me, those tasks. Yes, but this is a great example. How much shit do we know artists do that's not urgent and not important? How much shit do we know that artists do that's not urgent and not important?
One thing I want to lift up about this too is going back to the framework thing.
Yeah.
This is a completely different exercise you can do from everything else we've listed before. And that's good.
Yes.
That's the thing is you cannot have enough tools at your disposal. So, although I would argue that I just want to be clear. We're not laying out a step-by-step system.
We're not. These are ways that you could consider prioritizing in this
exercises moment. You could use. I could use, my time-sensitive tasks along the scheduling that, but then I can take maybe 5 items that are troubling me and run them through this Eisenhower matrix. It's like, please. No, I want to,
because this one's very similar, but I want to talk to your point. This is another one about whether it's not just urgent and important, but it's about effort and impact.
I love that.
So this is another way to consider this. High impact, low effort. Well, you're probably going to prioritize these tasks as they're going to give you the best ROI. High impact, high effort. Well, you need to plan and schedule those tasks. Low impact, low effort. Do these tasks if you have time. And then look at this, and we talk about this. Low impact, high effort. Are these even worth doing? I'm just dovetailing off of what you're saying, because does urgent and important hit for you, or does impact and effort hit for you?
And these are all I want to use because really it's funny because I'm talking to myself 5 years ago.
Sure.
Is very prescriptive, and it's still today. It's tools in the toolbox, all of these things. So it's like when you're in rehearsal and maybe this isn't, I feel blocked. I'm not having fun in the scene. Well, and maybe objective is not working. I'm using so much of tact. Maybe the tactics are not working for me. Oh well, maybe I'll do some mudahak. Maybe I'll work on center. But my center, where my center's at, and now that unlocks everything.
Yes,
there's no rhyme or reason to it, and that when I say there's no rhyme or reason, it's not like one thing, or maybe I'm always somebody who works from character, and this is not working for me. But now let me try playing an objective. Oh, now it's fun, easy, and free. There's no system in a sense of a clear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I encourage you to build that on your own.
Yes.
Which I think,
exactly.
which is what a lot of people. But in terms of what we're offering, I may run these exercises through a couple of different things when it comes to a bigger project that I've identified with all of these actions coming off it. I may identify this in terms of my larger life. I can run these things through. These are all tools to take at your disposal and apply at a case-by-case basis.
Well, because for me, this isn't one way that I prioritize. This is simply ranking the tasks by low, medium, and high-level tasks. Now, that meaning I have one massive to-do list, I color-code it. Red is the important, has to be done, then yellow, then green. Now, I don't need an Eisenhower metrics or an impact. I don't need that personally, or it's not what I use. So for me, it's simply high, medium, and low tasks that I essentially use to break down.
Now let me raise one thing. I'm kind of skipping it a little bit, but let me say this because I think it's important to bring up here. Imagine if you did this for everything in your life. You did the the Eisenhower matrix, you did the low impact, high impact, you identified projects, you had time sensitive action items, you did all of this. I don't think it's feasible to do all of it at the same time in terms of like run and to run every single open loop of your life through it. But if you were a supercomputer, who could do that, you could behave into this is the concept.
Right.
The concept behind like David Allen's way of working is all of these ways are feeding your subconscious. They're actually, and it may seem like it's confusing. It's not. It's clear. It's constant clarification, and you're constantly getting clear.
Well, this comes back to someday maybe, because I've had things on my to-dos, that that might be high, medium, and low tasks that all of a sudden go in my review time. Well, let me make that a someday maybe, because I keep not doing that.
Exactly.
And so I think the point I want to make there too is it's not just about prioritizing a list of things to do. It is about the totality of the system,
right?
Inclusive of what you were talking about at the beginning of this.
And if you did, because like the point is like if you were doing all of these things, which I don't think is feasible to do all of these things,
yes,
then you would be so clear about exactly what self-pitching for that project really means to you in relation to everything else.
Absolutely.
Exactly what taxes mean but now you do the best you can and you stay flexible so that, and if you do even 20% of what we're talking about today in any format, I don't care if it's the projects, I don't care if it's the open loops, I don't care if it's the Eisenhower matrix, I don't care if it's the Pomodoro, I don't care if it's any whatever we're still talking about here. If you did 20% more of it, you would be clearer, which means that you could trust yourself more and be more in flow in your daily workflow.
Yes.
That's why we're bringing up all these things.
And if I may, actually, I want to go back to the words you just said. I think one of the reasons why artists sometimes don't lean in the way they know they're capable of is because they don't trust that it will get done.
Right.
We've talked about this, about how, work begets work, but not just work begets work that I'm paid to do. Work begets more shit for you to accomplish.
Right.
And if you're like, oh, I'm finally going to produce that feature, and I take those meetings with those potential money people and they say yes, and next thing I know, I have to complete the project. I think one of the things that gives artists a lot of fear is, am I going to actually accomplish it?
Yes.
So to your point about trusting it, if I can be open, clear-minded, and confident that I have an ability to follow through, it's going to make this more feasible. Let's talk about some other time management and workflow considerations. I want to talk about one specifically personally for me. I love this. It's based on, because it's not exactly this thing called the Pomodoro technique, which is not something I created. A guy in the 80s or the 70s made it, something Pomodoro. And the whole conceit was basically timed workflow chunks. So 20 minutes on this, 20 minutes on that, 20 minutes on this with a 10-minute break. Something very simple like that. Now, I change this, and I change it every day, and I did it today multiple times, and I changed it. And I want to give you an example of what I mean. So I have several considerations in my workflow days, and the more open time I have, the more I try to more categories I try to consider, which usually consists of what I'll call quote unquote general work, which is almost like quote unquote free time. And what I mean by that is I'm not married to any one thing. If I need to do a review, I do my review then, which sometimes if I have more time, like 9 hours, I'll have specific review time always baked in. And I'll do that for 7 minutes. Don't ask me why I do the weird time limits, but I do. So I might do a review. Then I always have creative risk time. 8 minutes of that, which could be the work on our plan. It could be podcast prep. Who knows what it is. Then I have separate creative risk content creation time, as an example, separate from the other work that needs to get done, because as we sort of been pumping a lot of time into our socials, this is something that's been needing to get its own time. Then I have my own personal content creation time. But again, the creative risk one often has more than personal. So I'll usually give that 9 minutes, and personal might get even 4 minutes. And let me just say that I hope people are following me here. When my day started today, and I tend to get up pretty early, If I have 4 hours, like I did today, I'll be doing more. But then once the day begins and I'm getting phone calls, sometimes I'll take out that personal content creation time. I just put an X to it in my sheet. And then sometimes I had those 3 auditions. So the one that's tomorrow gets 8 minutes. The one that's 2 days after that gets 6. The one that 3 days after that gets 3
You're
minutes.
literally talking about creating almost chunk like. And I just want to be super clear because this isn't really the Pomodoro technique. It's inspired by it.
Exactly,
The Pomodoro,
that's what I'm saying.
I think it's good, but like the Pomodoro technique.
But then I have a break time.
I think the Pomodoro technique is really specifically it's the 25 and like the 15 or something.
No. He has. This is another. I know
it's
exactly.
Inspired. No, but and by the way, I find this really useful. I think you work like this with when you work. What I love about this is that what you do is that. You say, okay, so you have a cycle, let's say a 2-hour cycle. Really, it sounds like you have like a 45-minute cycle.
Sure.
And within that 45-minute,
I might touch 8 things.
You might touch 8 things for an average of 5 minutes each.
5 to 10 minutes.
Some one might get 7 minutes, one might get 2 minutes.
Yes.
And there are different categories of things.
Exactly.
And so you have a 45-minute cycle where you're sort of touching many things a little bit.
Yes.
Now look, and by the way, I do that too. And I think it's clear I don't do that for all things. I get and that's the thing is there's hybrid things, right? Like on my maker days, which we'll talk about in a moment, I use my maker days to work through kind of all the busy work I have to do. So things that don't require, I use that for a lot of busy work. So by that I mean, and not even busy work, just things that don't
require deep
work.
Yes.
So
brainstorm
5 ideas, even something like brainstorming 5 ideas for a TikTok. I'll spend 5 minutes doing that. I'll like put that in a cycle or respond to this email or list out the different steps for this automation for creative risk or like things that don't require much brain power for me. I will create a cycle, and I like to do those on manager days, which we'll talk about later. But like, regardless, I love the conceit of if you want to move incrementally, if you need to move incrementally on a bunch of different things, I love this sort of timed cycle system that you do. I love it.
And I just want to say, yes, and I'm always hesitant of saying it's my ADD because everyone's ADD. No offense to anybody, but one of the things that it's helpful for me, even with deep work, and hear me out. Oh, I'm going to spend 45 minutes on this thing, and I set a timer, literally on my watch. There's something that happens internally for me that allows me to focus. Deep State's listening to us. Sorry.
Literally, they are. They were talking about the CIA earlier.
It allows me to focus. So because there's something that happens knowing that there's a hard time where I use my time more effectively. Whether it's 8 minutes or an hour.
I like that.
I only have this time to do this. And so I find myself more effectively working through things. And by the way, the Pomodoro technique and what I also do is I always end it with a break. The break for me is usually cleaning. 12 minutes, 15 minutes, I go and I clean. And that's just, I put on music and it's a good break
for you.
Exactly. So I'm saying this because this is something, this sort of time blocking is a really effective way for me to work.
And you know what? I think I might start incorporating that to like having chunks in my day, like even on an open maker day, maybe having like, okay, 2 1-hour chunks during those maker days even where I cover some more incremental tasks like that.
Sure.
And by the way, but that's not to say so if you want to take, it sounds like you take all work through it, it's not just a specific kind of work you're doing.
I do take most.
You're doing basically all, so whether it's prepping an audition, which is something that I might want to do more of in a deep work way, or writing, like you might still take that through a cycle, which is totally valid.
But I understand that that's not how most people work.
But it's totally valid. And that's the thing is that you need to be fucking curious. You need to be curious.
Yes.
You need to be curious.
Let's talk about limiting distractions.
Well, this to me is huge. And let me say this. Right now, it's really hard because I like that you have this work environment. Create a workspace that works for you. This can include inspiration, a place that's private, quiet, free of distractions, has amenities you need, etc. More important than we think. I mean, look, a chaotic space, it's funny. I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but I'm going to bring this up. We're in such a prescriptive moment. AI, I'm all for, everything seems like steps 1, 2, 3 to success. And I realize that so much of my life has been like that. Is just give me the answer, give me the clear step by step, give me the. Listen, so many things are through osmosis and through subconscious, through spiritual. It is. It's just a fact. Listen, it's just like the number one way to prevent cancer is by being healthy. Obvious. But in like today's world, if you say something like that, you're like seen as like a fucking quack. You're seen as like some sort of like, whoa, new age nut job. It's like, it's just a fucking fact. If you say positive things to yourself, guess what's going to happen? You're probably going to have a more positive life. It's not, it's
there's no pill or
there's no,
magic book that's going to do it for you.
Exactly. And it's not as prescriptive as like you create your reality. And it is just a fact, and it's not weird or rubbing your crystals to say that. You just it's just like a fact of the matter where it's like these things matter.
Well, this is why I included work environment, because not that my work environment's so clean per se, as I'm looking at it literally, but okay, what is sitting behind me? My playbills mean a lot to me.
Smart.
My piano means a lot to me. I have a picture that you randomly scribbled on my wall. I have a picture of Michael. I have things, that I love, that are part of my world. And so when I sit down to work, because that's what we're talking about here, I don't feel like I'm in a fucking hell state.
I don't have this is probably the biggest problem I have with my environment, is that there's nothing in my working environment that inspires me. Because I don't have I don't have anything. You're so right. Of course, you seeing the playbill collection behind you.
Yeah.
Makes a fucking difference. It makes a difference.
It really does. It really does.
And so, I'm not saying that it's like, but it is important to consider if you are finding yourself uninspired, if you're finding yourself, how can you create an environment? This is something I need to do. Is creating an environment of inspiration, but also, listen, I know what you're about at the end of the day. I know that, movie stardom is something you wouldn't turn down, but you're a theater lover.
Absolutely.
And, this is what your life is. And so if you were to like, that's so you seeing that every day when you're working,
well,
means a lot.
And Michael can tell you, a lot of times I'll sit around and I'll play piano for 15 minutes. And what that does for me sometimes is I'm like, okay, because I'll lose myself in it. And it's I also want to bring it up because one of the things I hear a lot from artists is, oh, my roommates are a nightmare, or even my partner is like constantly there. And I'm bringing this up because it's not just about even decorating and creating inspiration. Your work environment, if that means you need to go to a coffee shop, or you need to go to the library, or you need to go to,
I'm going to give the Marriott Marquis.
The Marriott Marquis.
Listen, 8th floor Marriott Marquis on 45th Street.
You work really well there.
I work really well there.
And so it's like, what is, and so you identifying that, and there have been many times when we've been in Midtown, or like I'm going to go work there for a few hours. And that's like your little office, and it makes you feel more secluded, tucked away, and focused than if you went home and got to for some people, being at home is a huge distraction. Actually,
it kind of is for me, and so this is work environment is huge. Limiting distractions. Something's not distractions. Digital limited use of social media's browsing during work time. I mean, I'm not going to get into it now, but consider, I'm not great at it. The problem is that because we have the later. But look, listen, there's no reason why today I have an app called Opal on my phone that literally shuts me out.
Right.
And I have the time. I have the timeout, which I can use, which like increases each time. I'm not super active on socials anyway, but like, look, if you've scheduled posts for the day, or you did it, or even if not, I think that it's important to be plugged into socials sometimes. But like, I think it's even probably more important to have 15 minutes scheduled at the end of a manager day where I'm going to go through all of the things I've shot over the past couple days, and then I'll post it all to socials, wherever the fuck it is. I say this because things like cold turkey blocker, which I use on my computer, I do not have access to certain websites at certain times.
Pornhub.
I do not have,
Pornhub.
You know, I'm not gonna make the jokes I make. No, but like, you know, I do not have access to certain things at certain times, and so using these apps is not an Opal and cold turkey blocker or two that I recommend. Opal for your phone, cold turkey blocker for your laptop.
Well, I noticed that for you, where you and I are similar too. Forget just the social media. You always have your phone on.
I always have my phone on Do Not Disturb.
Literally, it's. I don't think I've ever. I don't remember the last time your phone wasn't on Do Not Disturb.
Yep, it's true.
I use it a lot too, but this is, and we did a whole episode on communication, but this is part of it. I don't need an Apple, at least Apple, you know, you can have settings now where your agents can call through if they need to, but I can't get every notification if I'm working.
Turning off notifications is so important. I mean, listen. Even if you are working for 15 minutes on something, it fucks up your flow when all of a sudden
100%.
The point is not to get jarred out of a flow state.
Because for example, if I'm working on something and I get an audition notice, what do we all do? We go, these 6 lines.
Reactionary.
Exactly. So just limiting distractions is a beautiful way.
We talked about this in the communication episode, and it's something I want to get better at. I need to get better at this, and I might block my Gmail I might block my Gmail,
personal, you mean?
My personal Gmail and my business Gmail at certain times, having designated times to take. Okay, so every day I have 30 minutes response time.
I know.
As opposed to me, like, you know, sending frantic texts that don't mean anything, that don't mean shit.
Exactly.
1-word responses. I have 20 minutes a day.
I know.
Where I know I can send meaningful responses to people.
This is huge.
I can spend, you know, as opposed to sending 1-word responses, I can think out a nice response, send something that means something, as opposed to checking my email constantly, why? Why am I checking my email constantly? There is no reason I should be checking my email twice a day.
You know, I have a theory. I'm bringing it up here. You know, everyone says they have ADD. I think this is the problem.
Oh, people don't have ADD.
I think that we live in such a fast-paced, instant gratification-driven world where we're constantly being bombarded. You know, for you listeners and viewers out there, our episodes are absolutely better when we are together. They're absolutely better because even if I have it on Do Not Disturb, I'll see something pop up, and the next thing I know, you know, I'll
just randomly go, oh, I want to look up, like, you know, how big Marilyn Monroe's tits were, and I'll like go and I'll.
No, this is what I'm saying.
And so if you can create,
yes,
I mean, listen,
I love your email thing. I think you're right.
The email thing is true. Also, block, you know. There's ways you can manipulate these cold turkey blockers and like things like Freedom, where it's like, I'm only allowed on this app and these sites for the next 3 hours. So I can't just go randomly Google something. I can't just go randomly go on YouTube and watch something. You know, so there are ways to I'm not going to get into all these tools. Look them up on YouTube. But yes, I want to talk about emails though briefly, about a way to deal with this.
Please.
We said this already. Not using your inbox as a staging area. This to me is huge.
Right, you were saying this.
There should not be an email that I needed that I keep putting off next to an email that I just got from somebody. That should not be there. So what I do, and I've gotten much better at it, actually, surprisingly, is my inbox is my inbox. Only unread messages go. The only thing there is messages that I have not read yet. That is the only thing. The second I open an email, now I am processing it. So now it needs to go somewhere.
And you don't forget about it?
Well, here's the thing, right? Is I know I have folders on the side. Okay? That say, and I have an action folder, a waiting on folder, a review read folder, and a someday maybe folder, or something. Those are or waiting on. That's actually the other one, waiting on. So what I do is I know that when I'm going to I have to get very clear. When I'm going to my Gmail, what am I doing? First, I'll deal with unread messages. So I'll go through unread messages and I will organize them. Then I will go to my action folder and I'll look at all of the emails that require a response or some sort of action. I'll work through those. You know, and that's the thing is I at the bottom of both of our emails, we have 72 hours notice, right? And then I have a waiting on folder. So those are things that I do not need to respond to. It's in the other person's court, or a lot of times like our podcast shit, those go in the waiting on folders because you're mainly dealing with that. So I just kind of put them there, and I treat it like a someday maybe. Is I'll check it once a day or once every 2 days and go, oh yeah, I'm still waiting to hear from Joey about this thing. But but what's confusing and stressful is when I have 500 emails and they all are different things and they're all next to each other, as opposed to I can work through an action folder very quickly.
I mean, I like what you're saying because you know that email is really good for me. However, in the past 2 months in particular, the problem you are stating has become my problem. And there are so many emails that I haven't categorized and dealt with. And just today I was going back through and I was like, oh my God, I didn't get back. And I was responding, but they're still stacked. And the thing that I do that's not as nearly as good as what you're saying is I'll snooze things, right?
Yeah, which is not terrible, but
so I'll snooze to tomorrow, later this week, and then come back. But even then, it's sort of an avoidance tactic. It's not really being clear.
You're kicking the can down the road.
Exactly.
As opposed to even going, like putting something in an action. I think that the two key things that I need to incorporate more into my life, and I'm pretty good with the action. I don't review them as much as I would like to, but designated correspondence time.
Mm-hmm.
I think once every 3 days.
Every 3 days, interesting.
Once every 3 days.
No, I mean it's reasonable. It's reasonable even in today's day and age.
And maybe I have an inbox clearing time once a day. So here's what I mean by an inbox clearing time once a day. I just need to check my email once a day. Twice a day, maybe. Beginning of the day, end of the day. That's all. Otherwise, I should block my fucking mail. The mail is the number one distraction for me. Block it otherwise. Beginning of the day, end of the day. Otherwise, it's blocked. And during that time, what I'm doing is that's my capture system, right? So it's all my unread emails, and then I organize them. If there's an incredibly urgent email, I will respond to it in the moment during my clearing time. Otherwise, it goes into an action or a waiting on folder. And then what I have every 3 days is correspondence time. So maybe it's an hour where I go through all of my text messages and I write meaningful responses, and I go through my actions and my action folders and my waiting on folders, and I clear out those, and I clear them out, or I try to get everything in. What I try to do is get everything into the waiting on folder, because then it's not me, then it's on somebody else. So I try to get everything into the waiting on folder. That would be an example. And the fear there is, again, but when you're talking about limiting distractions,
sure.
85% of the time I am wasting my time on email. 85% of the time I'm wasting my time.
Well, no, it's a good point, because what it's making me think about is in that flow, the flows that I do, I often will, and today was like 3 minutes on texts and 5 minutes on emails. And that's part of the flow. But it's funny because when I think about the texts, for example, a lot of time it has to do with making other people feel comfortable. So it's not necessarily based off of what I'm actually trying to do. It's more just me wanting to acknowledge other people, which is not a bad thing, of course. But in a lot of ways, what I value about what you're saying is, like, let's get back to 1996, meaning a time when I would argue even communication was more realistic. This is not realistic or sustainable, the way that we communicate, and it's a huge part of workflow, which is why I think emails
are meaningful. If somebody is reaching, for instance, if somebody just needs to be acknowledged, right? One, as opposed to having to send 40 texts back and forth, right? One long text.
Sure. Yes.
With a beginning, middle, end, that's meaningful and hard. And then if it's somebody that you really care about, maybe what that correspondence time is doing is sending like a short text, but then arranging, hey, would you want to hang out on this day?
Sure.
Do you want to
Yes.
Again, it's getting out of as much as we can reaction mode.
Absolutely. Which I think this is big. I think what you're saying is really interesting, because I would argue that exactly what you're saying is how we live. We're also reactionary. We get to know someone liked my photo. Ooh. We're just sort of like bobbling around rather than like getting into like the state of like, what am I doing? Where am I headed? No, it's a very good point.
It could be during at nighttime when you're decompressing, you're watching RuPaul's Drag Race. Maybe that's your correspondence time.
Drag it. No, but yes. Let's talk about this, because this is massive. We've said this many times, but I just want to talk about review time a little more deeply here.
I need to pee, but I can hear you. You talk about it. That's maybe literally.
Okay, Mike's going to pee while I'm telling you about this, okay? He's being 20 feet away from me, so maybe he'll turn around and he'll flash me. So I want to talk about review time, because, we really do consider it to be, in a lot of ways, the centerpiece of all workflow, right? So as we've said, sorry to be repetitive here, but because it's sort of worth bringing up. As he did that, and I'm now looking at my I know, because right as I said that, I started looking at my texts. So the centerpiece of all workflow is review time. It gives you clarity because it helps you understand all the open loops in your life, right? So because as we keep saying, we're constantly bombarded with shit. So you use that time to clarify where things stand and to organize, right? So put those things in their appropriate categories. Are they next actions? Are they projects? Are they someday maybe, right? And then there's going to be different times when you're going to be doing this review. And this is some of the stuff I want to talk about, right? Because we have different moments where we can review. And I'm going to start with the micro and get to the macro. So there's the micro, daily. What do I need to get done tomorrow? Right? To your point about the non-negotiables, but also sometimes not just non-negotiables, sometimes things pop up. Oh, an audition pops up. I have to get an audition done tomorrow that came out of the blue. So that has to become a priority for me. Also, review time. What did I get done today? And how and a review time, how did that go for me? Did I stick to the thing you were just talking about? Did I stick to the parameters that I set out for myself for the day? And how could I sharpen my workflow tomorrow? Oh, because even hearing you talk about this, maybe I'm not going to worry so much about text messages as part of my day. Maybe I'm going to limit those categories in my chart. Okay, let's talk about weekly.
Well, this is huge for me but sorry to say this, because at the beginning of this, if let's say you do that projects list and you do that someday maybe list, the point is that you don't just let those sit there and dust in some document, note, Excel sheet.
Right.
You're constantly reviewing them.
Right.
What he argues is every week, which we've always had a weekly review as well,
always.
Weekly update. But, it's like, because every week you should be going through your projects list.
Sure.
Oh, the trip to New Orleans. Okay, not really. Or you know what? That is important to me.
Because what you're doing right now, imagine if people did this, took that time to go, why not really? Or why is it important? Like, you really have to review like what it means to you in your life.
And maybe reviewing this alongside an artist statement, or reviewing this alongside your overall, having written down your overall professional growth strategy. I would argue, so you cannot, and I know you're going to talk about this quarterly, which is, I believe is.
Well, we have weekly and we have monthly.
Monthly. I would even, so if you have monthly, sorry, you go.
Well, no, so we have weekly. Same thing. What are my goals for the week? What am I hoping to accomplish? But then even macro, that is the month. What am I trying to get through this month? Let me give you an example. Of monthly. I want to get new headshots. Okay, well, by the end of the month, I want to have them scheduled. The reason why this is important is because headshots is an example of something that all of a sudden 9 months in and nothing's moved, nothing's happened. But it's a pretty simple task. But there might be a few steps that have to happen. I need to review Ted Ely and Emily Lambert, who's going to be on our podcast soon, and Philip Lulu, whatever. Okay, well, I can do that within the week. Again, this is the idea of breaking down macro to micro goals.
Sure.
And then, though, to your point, then we start to get a little more advanced. Then let's look every 3 months. Let's look quarterly. And by the way, what business does not do a quarterly review?
Well, you're talking about a review in a very specific way. I want to
Mhm.
throw, which is good,
Okay.
which is reviewing to identify what work needs to be done, which is part of it.
Yeah.
I even think there's another way to review,
Okay.
which is every week I'm gonna review everything, no matter what it means to me. I'm just gonna look at everything. I'm
Okay.
gonna look at all of my someday maybe projects.
Okay.
I'm gonna look at all of my projects. And the idea is because you are always reviewing, you're doing a daily review. Like you said, what did I do today? What did I say I wanted to do tomorrow? By the way, the review also consists of any notes that I've taken down, things
Sure.
I've captured. Let me review those notes and make
Mhm.
sure that they are organized
Mhm.
into whatever bucket they go into. And then let me review, I think even in a dream world, if you have I have a huge filing cabinet in my bedroom. That's where I keep documents. Da, 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 da. I review those.
Children.
Like I don't think you need to review them every week, but every month let me review those documents just to see just to see what's in there again and go, oh, I don't need this still. Or da, da.
Sure.
So I'm
Yes.
reviewing all of these things because what am I getting? Context. I'm getting context for where everything stands in my life at
And
any
clarity
given
for
moment.
what you need to do next.
And from that context, you can then start to identify
Right.
what you're talking about, which is what are the actions that come off it.
Sure.
That's
Absolutely.
that's the thing I just want to be clear about because
No, very
do I
good
need to
point.
get the headshots this month?
And the
Well,
more macro you go, like the month or quarterly,
exactly.
the more you have to do that. To
Right.
also then ask yourself, because you take New Orleans as an example, why am I not doing that? Right? Like I won't bring up what we were talking about before we started recording, but like that, like about you, because you could share if you so choose. But it's very interesting to me.
What?
I'll say the rep thing. It's
Oh,
very
sure.
fascinating to me.
Yeah,
Personally.
that I have not been trying to get really a rep. I've not prioritized it at all over the past.
but and I guess the point of view is like it was that I guess that is important, but also that's fascinating to me that you're like that's not a priority for me.
But here's what you're right about. Let me say this. Why I get what you're saying. The reason why a quarterly review is important is because if I identify my goals as my quarterly priorities based off of, again, constant reviewing I'm doing every week of where things stand, what have I moved along. If I identify, I think these are the things. Here's what I think my priorities are over the next till the end of 2024. Next 4 months. Here's my priorities. I see it more not quarterly, but maybe
Whatever.
trimesterally.
Whatever.
Income. So continuing to grow creative risk, but also I need to find there are so many other ways to make money with AI. And I would love to. There's so many ways to make.
How was that AI thing you did with?
I've only done a little bit of it.
No. The thing you did the other day. Remember that I did.
Oh
that?
yes. That was
Weird,
great.
right? But easy.
Yeah, they thought I was so they loved me. But anyway, because I made like a joke, I was like, "That's gonna be some good fucking AI," because I was crushing it. Anyway, but ways to make money with AI: YouTube automations, selling digital products. There's so many ways to make and financial security is becoming more, especially now that I don't have a job lined up. I'm like realizing like, damn, I need to continue to really grow these things and really make money from them. So okay, that's a priority. And I think another thing is personal marketing.
Sure.
With self-producing being a third. Writing my own which really is writing my own stuff. Then if those are if when I'm doing my weekly reviews, I'm not saying that those then are hard and fast, dictate everything. They dictate my whole life, but I should review all of the open loops I have that I've organized alongside those quarterly priorities I project.
Exactly.
So that's why reps. That's why. But at the same time, where you're right about is there are times where I'm self-pitching like crazy because I want a job. Well, if booking acting work is a high priority for me, which it's actually not really over the next couple of months, but let's say it was, then why am I self-pitching, but I'm not also trying to get an agent?
Well, you know what you're bringing up, though, too, inadvertently or advertently, that I just think is important. Again, getting out of reactionary culture. That might not mean that you change things immediately. For example, if you're focusing on marketing and income, but then you're realizing week to week, I really need more people helping me here. It might not mean that you upset the apple cart
That might be one of those things I do the 15. That might be one of those for me. That might be one of the things I cycle through in my 15-minute cycles.
Or you go, okay, next quarter, this becomes it.
Exactly.
Because businesses all the time, they go, we want to add in this product. We want to try this thing. We're not going to stop midstream and change everything because you got something in effect.
There's too, and you know what? I want to call myself out because there's too much of that for me. I've been changing streams too much.
We do too. We talk
in a
about this.
macro sense. But but I wonder what it would be like to really commit.
Right.
The next 3 months, these are my primary focuses.
Right.
And if I get to the other things, I will get to them. But and again, I want to just be really clear.
There has to be a really strong reason
to pivot.
And
so
which review time would only allow for you to understand.
And this is where I guess we're getting a little weeby and kicking the can down the road, but you have to trust because I have experienced this. And we'll talk. Why do I not do something we have not written down here? This works. This works for me.
Oh.
Reviewing, when you review things, you can behave in these answers. I can't tell you what your quarterly priorities are going to be. I have no fucking idea.
No.
You need to review your long-term goals alongside what you currently have, alongside your short-term. And then I guarantee you, surprisingly, if you review those things in relation to each other, it becomes clear. It becomes clear what your quarterly priorities are. And so I know that sounds kind of magic and whatever, but it's fucking true. It's fucking true. The number one reason I don't do this is because of lack of discipline. I don't have the discipline to maintain the system of constant reviewing.
And can I talk about that? You said something really interesting to me. So Mike just did something there that even in this conversation, we're writing our own personal reviews
right now.
And the value of it is if you are someone who goes, oh, I'm lacking discipline. Well, then that's something you need to deal with. And let me be more specific.
That's an open loop.
It's an open loop. How do I become more disciplined in my life? How do I develop habits that are more disciplined? And the reason why this is so big is because we talk about analyzing and improving. Analyzing and improving as part of work. This is a great example of that. Oh, I don't have enough discipline. So I need to understand how I become more disciplined. And if I can solve that problem, then I can probably make better use of my review time and my overall work. This is I hope I'm underlining this point clearly and well enough because it's actually not that complicated. For you to go, oh, well, part of discipline is going to be I need to set a regular wake up. I'm making this up. Okay, I need to wake up at 7 a.m. Oh, I need to develop these habits. Oh, there are exercises I can do that are going to create X, Y, or Z discipline. I don't know enough about creating discipline.
Well, let me tell you something where my mind goes.
Where?
Because I've been thinking about, and I did a whole podcast, my whole weekly Get At It was about this week, which is about this is the first time in a year where I've had an open schedule. I haven't been in a show. And it's wild how different it feels now.
Good or bad?
Bad. Because I'm not as hungry. Because I've been working, and so my time has not been all of my time has not been my own.
You really have worked back to back.
I've worked pretty consistently, and so now to have a truly open schedule, not be beholden to anybody or have anything on the horizon, is scary. And when I talk about my weekly Get At It is okay. Well, this is the perfect time.
This is the moment.
If you're not working, this is the moment because when you start working, that takes. We all. That's what we want to do. We want to be in place. We want to be in movies. We want to be working. When you're not working on, when you're not in a project, is the time to build these routines. And I would argue, the first routine to build is review time. Above waking up time.
I agree.
Above because that's the thing is I can say arbitrarily,
exactly.
Working out, I want to work out every day. Well, do I? Is that something that's really important to me? Well, that's why reviewing is, I think, the first routine to build. A daily review at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day, potentially. A daily review of all the things you have going on. A weekly review at the end of the week. And then a monthly review. Those are the first routines to build because then that's going to determine what your morning and evening routines are.
Well, and let me talk about because I'm actually literally doing it for myself right now. This is a big one, but an annual review.
Sure.
I love these. I mean, and by review, our 5-year plan template, this is what we do. We go back through and you set new goals. And you have to ask yourself questions. Am I still on track? Did I meet those goals? If so, why? Why is that? How was I able to meet those goals? Why not? Why not? Why was I not able to meet those goals? Does this all still align with the vision for my career? What an opportunity. But sometimes, just to say this about reviewing, people avoid it because I think it can bring up also not good feelings.
Of course not, because you didn't do the things you wanted to do.
Because you didn't do the things you said you wanted to accomplish. But that
doesn't mean you shouldn't be fucking reviewing. And
in
why?
fact, it means you really need to be reviewing, because I think you wrote this down, and I love this. When you are reviewing consistently, you can behave in a more intuitive way. So if you afford yourself the opportunity to sometimes face what's going to be painful sometimes and review like you need to and you can, then you're going to, again, the word that keeps coming up today too, is build that trust with yourself.
It's acting. It's acting for me. Acting for me is about, when I'm in this space, being in flow. What I call grace-inspired action. Being in grace and inspired action. And when you just get sometimes, sure, you allow yourself to be in grace when you just get something, you're like, okay. But oftentimes, it's when especially when I'm doing a play, it's when I've prepared like crazy that I can then really just let it go completely and be in flow. Yeah. It's the same thing with life, is that when we review consistently and constantly, and we have the discipline to do that and not be panicking about, I'm not really doing anything right now, I'm just reviewing these things, then you can do in a more intuitive way, because you have the context. The context is there in your subconscious.
Yes.
I want to move through some of these. I mean, this is a long episode, but
I know, sorry folks, but it's good.
But listen, I think it's important to blow through some of these other things. Staying flexible. Staying.
Do you want to talk about maker manager or no?
Oh yes. Well, I want to talk about saying no, and I want to talk about maker manager.
Okay.
And be done.
Okay.
Oh, because maker manager is next. This to me has been very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. And I forgot the guy who made it up. It wasn't Hormozy, just uses it. He wasn't the guy who made it up. But it's this idea, I think it came out in the 90s. Maker time and manager time. In the context of businesses, what this was like, there's people in a business that are makers and they're managers. Mm-hmm. So a maker is somebody who, like, a maker is a video editor who makes content for your company. Mm-hmm. He has to do long, deep work to make an output, right? A strategist, somebody who's a strategist around, like, a product strategist about, okay, like, looking at data for market needs and then identifying what products we can come up. That's somebody who's I would argue is a maker. They have to do some deep creative work.
Sure.
A manager is somebody who's not doing deep creative work, but who's managing things, right? Meeting with people, getting updates, delegating work.
Yes.
That's not deep. I mean, it's not like uncreative, but that type of work is more managerial.
Doing some of these reviews.
Doing what?
The review time.
I think the review time is managerial to an extent. And let's identify the differences.
And if I may, just to say, part of why we're talking about this is because we, as entrepreneurs, but especially creative entrepreneurs at that, are both makers and managers.
This is what I was about to get to. But let me give the exact definition of manager and maker, because I like this.
Yeah.
And you could. Manager time is characterized by short, fragmented blocks of time, often filled with meetings, emails, and reactive tasks. Mm-hmm. Not included in there is meetings. Meetings as well. Meetings with people that's managerial, because you're getting an update on things. Maker time is extended, uninterrupted periods dedicated to focused, deep work. They're the ones who produce the actual output, whether it's writing, coding, designing, or any form of creation. Mm-hmm. So makers thrive on long stretches of time to immerse themselves in work and reach a flow state. Mm-hmm. We are both makers and managers.
Right.
So what I try to do is I try to stack my meetings, and you could have certain blocks, right? But let's take it for days now. If Tuesday's a maker day for me, or manager day for me, I'll try and have any meeting I need to have. It doesn't matter whether it's for X, Y, Z, or this. I'll have all my meetings in one day, and I'll also do some more administrative busy work that day.
Sure.
The work that doesn't require me to do a ton of deep work.
Yeah.
But then I try to have open stretches. I try to have, certainly when it comes to editing the podcast, making content, I need at least a 6-hour window.
Right.
Where I have uninterrupted time, because when you have, is it raining outside? Oh, because the concept is, and this is true for me, if I have an open day in one meeting, that day is ruined.
Exactly. And you hear this a lot.
Or at least the 2 hours before it and the 2 hours after it are ruined. And the reason why that's the case is because I'm emotionally prepping for that, right? Like I'm going, okay, like my mind is already thinking about the meeting. I may need to actually prepare for the meeting.
Right.
So when you stack your administrative tasks alongside your meeting tasks, you don't have to ever really get into deep flow.
Sure.
So I find this really useful. Some of us don't have cold days we can dedicate to it. So if it's for you, break it up in chunks. So I have a 3-hour manager chunk.
Well, that goes kind of like how it's like a mix of what I do and what you do.
This is a 3-hour manager chunk where I'm going to try and take all my meetings and do my administrative tasks. And this is a 3-hour maker chunk where I'm going to spend my time kind of doing one thing or two things at most, probably, where I'm just going to fucking go into deep work.
I love that.
I find this has been a game changer.
And Hormozy is the one who we were listening to a podcast episode of his where he was talking about this. And I actually really do relate to this. And I've heard many people relate to this who said, if I have a meeting at 4, it's hard for me to do anything for the rest of the day.
Right.
Well, that's good to know. So then how can you fill that time with like less heavy or important weighted work that you can then still get things done?
Or it is important. It's just that it doesn't need to be deep.
Sure, exactly.
It needs to be, I need to get these points together because I'm having this meeting with this guy. So let me just kind of get these points together. I'm not taking the time to think expansively, bigly about these things. Whatever.
2024.
Okay, let's keep going.
Let's talk about a few more quick things here before we let you go. One, again, we keep saying it, but to stay flexible. This is absolutely challenging in all of this, but because stuff's going to pop up. But staying flexible is the key in all of this. But I want to, you said this earlier, say no, folks. No, I cannot do that project. No, I can't do that audition.
Right.
Nope, I cannot hang out.
Right.
Fuck FOMO, embrace JOMO, the joy of missing out.
I like JOMO.
Yeah.
Did you make that up?
No, I actually saw it somewhere. It said JOMO, joy of missing out. I'm like, that sounds like me. No, but really, because we again in the same culture where we live in this reactionary, want to like sometimes we have to embrace it. We have to embrace that we're not going to be able to do all of the things, and so saying no is a powerful tool. I do want to talk about this last piece here, and I think I want to maybe do a whole episode on this one day, and it's about morning routines and evening routines and all of this, because when you really think about it, how you start and end your day does matter.
Yes.
How you start your day and you go, I'm setting myself up for my day by doing blank. That's going to look different for everybody. But whether you are meditating or exercising, for me, I found like when I exercise first thing in the day at 7 a.m. or after I do a little something else and get that done, I'm setting myself up to go, okay, I'm stronger and more present for the day. Journaling, meditation. It doesn't matter what that is for you.
And look, if you're looking for structure in your life, this is a great place to start.
Absolutely.
A great place to start is to have a very structured beginning and end of your day that you stick to. That is 100%. A great way to just as a place to begin. So I wake up.
I think morning routines are easier for people than evening routines.
Yes, because you lose discipline at the end of the day.
Exactly. And I'm working on this. I've worked really, I haven't had an edible in a long time. And the reason why is because I often read the paper now before I go to bed, which I don't know if that's helping me. But I try not to be on my phone. I try desperately not to be on my phone. Michael will tell you I'll often go upstairs at 9:45, 10 o'clock, because I need to sort of, and again, for some people it could be reviewing, setting up for the next day. I don't know. But as opposed to like shutting off and like your day just sort of crumbles,
yes.
What if it like sets you up for the next morning? I'm not saying every day, maybe two nights.
This doesn't need to be an hour. This could be 10 minutes.
It can be 10 minutes. But it's what I would argue that a lot of this has to do with mindset. both morning and evening routines, in terms of allowing you to even be in the state to review, to work, to get through things as effectively as you would like to. Again, this has been, we recognize, I don't even, probably 2 hours.
Yeah, it's 2 hours and 30 minutes, it might look like.
It's a massive episode, but the truth is that this is the massive topic, which is why we suggest you potentially listen to this again, maybe quarterly, whatever it's going to take.
Yeah, and try different things that we've listed here. Take one or two of the things we've talked about and implement it for a month.
Yes.
And see how that works for you.
100%. Okay, comfort food performances.
God. Okay, you go first.
I'll tell you, I'm always shocked by Dakota Fanning, and what a good actor she is. But I'll tell you the performance that was really great. She was really good in Ripley recently. But my comfort food performance of hers is a movie called Hide and Seek.
Oh, with Robert De Niro.
Yes,
as the dad,
and he's pretty good. I don't think he's that great.
Yeah, I love him.
I know. I get it. But he's actually quite good in this. And this, I'm like, oh, he's actually doing something. Dakota Fanning is great. I mean, who is this child? Who was this child?
She's crazy.
She's so good in this movie. I mean, low-key acting circles around Robert De Niro, making him look really good, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So Dakota Fanning in Hide and Seek.
Well,
scary,
even though
scary.
Last episode I did Denzel, I think I'll do it because you brought up. Have you seen not Training Day? Jesus Christ, Man on Fire.
No.
Watch Man on Fire. So Man on Fire is
Denzel Washington.
Denzel and Dakota Fanning. The company performance is their relationship in the movie. She's I forget where she lives. I think Cuba or Mexico. It's a white family, like a diplomat family, or they're rich. I forgot what. But she gets kidnapped by the cartel, and he's the bodyguard, and he's like this alcoholic, and he's like,
why is he gotta be the bodyguard?
Well. But he's an alcoholic, and he's very bitter, but he's ex intelligence or special forces or something, and he's like super crotchety and like really resentful of life. But then he falls, him and this girl that he's protecting, they like form like a real bond, like a father-daughter bond. And then she gets kidnapped. And he goes on he becomes like committed and into it, and
exactly
he goes on a rampage, and
he becomes a man on fire.
There's this scene specifically at the end where they reunite.
I want to watch it.
They reunite. That's like one of the best.
So is the performance both of them, or just Denzel?
Their relationship, Denzel and Dakota together.
Because I've started a document now. I'm going to track these.
That's good. Yeah. So Denzel and Dakota Fanning and Man on Fire.
Go Dakota.
Great.
Go D's.
All right.
Go forth and prosper. Be effective.
I think this is all recorded. Good.
Bye, y'all.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Creative Risk. If you've enjoyed, please don't forget to like, subscribe here on YouTube, follow our channel, or follow us on your favorite podcast app. A quick review on Apple Podcasts, like we said, would mean the world to us. We read them all, as I said. And if you want to go deeper, join our Patreon community starting at just $5 a month for exclusive content, motivation, and a supportive community. Check out patreon.com/Creative Risk Podcast, and we'll see you next time.